rapport, but it took him a while to get started. And once he got rolling, he became a transcendent player for the franchise. And so it's not all about the stats or the numbers. He became a player that, for me, everybody in this community is just always going to love and have a great feeling for. And I couldn't be happier for him going out on his own terms. And I think fighting back from injury, tearing it again in the Super Bowl, and going off a champion, if he had come back, it would have been a major mistake.
Absolutely. I mean,
And I didn't want him back. Could you tell yesterday, like when the subject came up, I didn't want him to come back.
I didn't really either. And it's not that, like, I didn't think he could still play.
No.
And that I didn't like Brandon Graham. It's just, like, it felt like the perfect spot. And
right off.
How rare is it to see a professional athlete? Like, because we remember them more. But you need to think about this for me. Like, we remember the perfect retirements, right? The guys that walk out on top, the guys that walk out at the right time, the guys that are all-time greats that you say, wow, I'll remember this forever. They finished their career in such a great way. But they stick in our memory because they're so special, they're so unique, they're so rare. For every Brandon Graham, there's probably 100, 200, maybe more professional football players that walk away in a situation that is not what he's walking away. And not only does he have the resume, he has the moments, he has the Super Bowls. Yes.
They're asked to leave. They're injured. They're whatever it is.
Exactly. Like, you don't get perfect times to walk away, and even then it's still difficult. So throughout the show, we're going to let you hear audio from Brandon Graham's retirement yesterday, his press conference, and the questions he was asked, the answers he gave, some of the things he said during his speech. And we're just going to have a lot of reaction to what it feels like for you to see a player of that stature, a personality of that stature, an Eagle of that stature walk away from the game. And notice I'm saying walk away from the game, not walk away from the team. I do not think, much like we've seen Jason Kelce still talking with the team and around, much like we've seen Fletcher Cox still talking with the team and around, I don't think we've seen the last of Brandon Graham around the NovaCare complex, around the link.
No, I don't think so.
Around the team. But just, you're not going to see him play anymore. And that's going to be a tough thing. So we're going to start with initial reaction on Brandon Graham, which John and I just gave there. And hearing that he is retiring after 15 years as a member of the Philadelphia Eagles and going down as one of the all-time greats in franchise history. Just what did that make you feel yesterday when you heard the news? 610-632-0975 is the phone number to jump in on the phone line and the text line. And we're going to hit this from a bunch of different angles today because this does a lot of things. One, it makes you reflect. Two, it makes you question about what's next. How do you fill that void, not just on the field, but in the leadership of the team? It makes you think about what made Brandon Graham so special, the makeup of the player, and what special concoction had to happen for him to get to a point where he was so beloved by this fan base. I mean, we've been lucky with the guys, and we are going to talk about the big four. Then I'm going to call them Jason Kelce, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, and the only one remaining, Lane Johnson, who, of course, tweeted out the Will Smith meme of him standing alone in the house from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, where it's like, everybody left. I'm just here standing by myself.
Okay, you don't remember that, by the way.
I do.
You remember it from watching in reruns.
Yeah, from it happening live.
That was actually a sad moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like when that aired, I think now Lane Johnson's looking around going, damn, I've survived.
Yeah.
I've survived this long.
It's a testament to him, which we'll give credit to Lane Johnson for being the last man standing, even though it doesn't take away anything from the careers of the other three guys. I don't think that I truly realized until I sat down behind this microphone this morning how much this move matters to me, and I know how much it matters to the fan base. And then you're just flooded with this rush of emotion and memories from that time, and we want to be a place where you can absolutely celebrate that today here on Kincade Salciunas. So,
can I tell a personal story on you?
Absolutely.
We were at the Philly Sports Trips pre-Super Bowl get-together in South Philly.
Yeah.
And it is the first time in the presence of an athlete that I've ever seen you be like you don't you
DJ's over there.
Connor keeps it very professional. We're down on the field. Like, I remember opening day last year for the Phillies, and we're down on the field. We're talking to Jason Stark and everything like that. It's the first time I've ever seen you be like, Brandon Graham's over there.
Yeah,
we should get a picture with him at this event, this casual event, and do that. And he brought that joy to people.
Absolutely.
I've never seen you act like that ever. And you weren't acting. He wasn't acting fanboy.
No,
but you were obviously moved by Brandon Graham.
It's funny because it's not even because he's like, oh, this all-time favorite Eagle for me. Because he is. But Brandon Graham was one of those guys who's like, I love the player. I think he's great. I had other players that, like, I connected with more.
Sure.
Right? Like, I feel like I connected with Donovan McNabb more because that's my childhood quarterback. Like, I'll always love Five. So, like, BG...
Five will always love you.
Yes, he will.
That's great.
We're going to have a conversation later on in the show about BG and how we felt maybe a little bit differently this time than we did about other big Eagles retirements. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. But I think there's a testament to how good the organization has been and how we're going to look at Brandon Graham's retirement. But he's just, the personality of him is so engaging that when I saw him in person, I knew I could come, go over and say hello. I'm just like, you can't not want to hang out with Brandon Graham.
And that's the key, is that there are people like that in life that have that energy. He's got it.
And to marry that with the type of football player he was is a special, special thing. So what are your initial reactions when you heard that Brandon Graham was retiring after 15 years as a member of the Philadelphia Eagles, one of the all-time greats? Coming up next, we're going to start to break down what it was that made Brandon Graham so loved in this city. Why was it?
If you break down today, I'm going to cry.
Oh, I'm not going to break down, I don't think. But, hey, it's an emotional day for some people. I imagine there were tears shed yesterday by more than just Brandon Graham, who was indeed emotional at the podium. What made him so loved in this city? We're going to try and start to figure it out next with some of your help on the phone line and the text line. It's Kincade Salciunas back after this here on 97.5 The Fanatic.
We want to hear from you, so text us at 610-63...
It's going to be the Brandon Graham retirement special here today. We have other topics that we're going to get to throughout the show, and we're going to attack this from a bunch of different angles. But if he hasn't deserved this type of a reaction when he hangs it up, I don't know who in the city's history does, right? Like, he is the perfect marriage of performance on the field, leadership in the locker room, lack of drama. Honestly, the only drama we've ever had from Brandon Graham was in his final season when he decided to talk about the A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts relationship.
He fell in stepped in a couple of puddles this year.
Yeah.
And by the way, it could have been disastrous.
It could have been.
For this team. Thankfully, it didn't.
No, and they ended up winning the Super Bowl anyway, so I think we could just go ahead and leave those off the record as it may be.
Leave it off. I think that what happened is later in his career, Brandon was preparing for his next career, which will be successful. If he's in the media, he'll find a way to be successful in it. And I think he was dipping his toes too much in it.
Yeah.
And got a little derailed.
But
it worked out.
Like, it's tough to do media stuff while you're also a professional athlete anyway.
Can't do it.
I think there's a way, but I think you have to be very, very good and very, very polished and proven in media space, and that's impossible.
Aaron Rodgers-like.
Yeah.
That's it. You want to be Aaron Rodgers-like. You don't want to be letting all the secrets out of your locker room, telling inside stories.
Yeah.
When you're an active player, you cannot do that.
But the problem is, as an active player, you're always going to be figuring out media for the first time in that sense. So it's impossible to kind of balance those things clear.
And I think it says a lot that he got Jalen Hurts out there yesterday, smiling, joking around Jalen Hurts, too. You hardly see that guy out of his house, and you hardly see him smile. Not a shot at him, and he's just so stoic.
With the fake wedding pictures out there.
Yeah, exactly. I saw those.
Brandon Graham could make anybody smile. That dude could make anybody have a laugh. That guy has an infectious personality. It's part of the reason we loved him in this city. So this is one of the other questions I want to open up as we take a whole bunch of different looks at an all-time Eagle hanging it up. What was it that made Brandon Graham so loved in this city? Like, what was it that we connected with him so much about? And it wasn't just football. If you think it was just because he was a great football player, there have been great football players in this town that we have not connected with the way that we did with Brandon Graham. And what can other players, as we try and figure out what it was that made BG so special, who come to this city learn from his time here? The good news, a lot of times we see players that don't truly understand how the fan base feels about him. Sometimes positively, sometimes negatively. They just don't have a good gauge for it. Maybe because they shut out the outside noise, which for some people work. But Brandon Graham talked yesterday, and he brought up how he realized he was one of the more loved players on the Philadelphia Eagles.
Probably this year, I started to feel that because I, said that it was going to be my last year, and then started to see old videos pop up and what I had went through during them times, and just remembering those moments, and just knowing that I tried to stay as best. I felt like this year was that year for me, where it started to sink in. And I think that's why I came to this conclusion of doing this year, especially after winning the Super Bowl.
Can I tell you that I hated that answer?
Yeah? Why's that?
It made me feel bad.
Why did it make you feel bad?
He said this year it started to feel that way. That he was one of the most beloved athletes and everything like that.
And you feel like it should have been sooner.
Yeah. Like I would hope that he knew that there are grown men like me who literally would be thrilled for the rest of our lives because of stripping the ball from Tom Brady. And that picture, a piece of art, hangs in our house because it's my wife's favorite play ever, watching Brady sit on the ground crying. That Brandon Graham stripping that ball, and we have that as a painting in our house. I'll look at it forever and smile. I hope he felt long ago how beloved he was.
I'm glad you brought that up because I think he did in a way, but I don't think he processed it in a certain way.
Yeah,
so
I got to hear that.
We're going to talk about that coming up next. I also would love your responses on why you think Brandon Graham was so loved in the city. What made him so loved to you? 610-632-0975. We're also going to get into more of the reality of the situation, which is how do you replace the production of Brandon Graham? Johnny? A theory we tossed out there yesterday about a certain edge rusher seems to have legs.
Oh, didn't it take legs yesterday afternoon?
Oh, yes, it did. We will talk about that coming up next. It's Kincade Salciunas. I'm in for Andrew Salciunas over here. John Kincade, Brendan Gunn along with me, and we're back for more after this here on 97.5 The Fanatic.
Fanatic Sports Update.
BG hangs them up. I'm Brendan Gunn with your Fanatic Sports Update. After 15 seasons and helping bring the Eagles 2 Super Bowl titles and the city of Philadelphia 2 Super Bowl titles, Eagles legend Brandon Graham called it a career yesterday. The 2010 first-round pick will always be remembered for his strip sack in Super Bowl 52 to help secure the Eagles their first Super Bowl championship, but he did so much more on top of that. He played the most games in Eagles history in an Eagles uniform, and he retires with the third most sacks in team history as well. At his press conference yesterday, he had one last message for the city of Philadelphia.
While my time on the field is coming to an end, my love for this team and city will never fade. Philadelphia and everybody, from the bottom of my heart, I just want to thank y'all. EAGLES, Eagles. Fly, Eagles, fly. My last one. BG out, baby.
The Sixers, they continue their road trip tonight with their third of 6 straight away from the Wells Fargo Center. Tonight is in OKC to take on the Thunder. Tip-off is at 8 in that one. You can catch that game live right here on The Fanatic. And the Flyers, they remain idle tonight, but they're back in action tomorrow night down in Washington to take on the Capitals. This update was brought to you by Rapid Radios. Rapid Radios are instant push-to-talk walkie-talkies offering national LTE coverage. For a limited time, go to rapidradios.com now for 60% off and free UPS shipping. Add code radio and get an extra 5% off at checkout. I'm Brendan Gunn on the home of the 76ers and the Flyers, 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com.
Ricky Batalico.
Why can't you be that team that gets that stroke of luck?
retirement announcement yesterday. We had a feeling this was coming. And you know what?
So, yeah.
Maybe that affects a little bit the way that you felt about it yesterday. If you were someone who listened to that and was like, maybe I'm a little less emotional than I thought I was going to be about an all-time great Eagle hanging it up. We're going to have a conversation about John and I's reactions to the news yesterday. I think part of that was it was expected, right? The Jason Kelce retirement was not injury-related. Not that Brandon Graham couldn't have come back from his injury, right? I think if he still felt that he had more to prove, he could have rehabbed and came back. I mean, heck, he came back and played in the Super Bowl from that same injury. It's just he was injured. They won it all, and he was at that point in his career where it seemed to make sense. Like Jason Kelce, for a couple years, had done the maybe I'll hang it up. No, I'm coming back. Fletcher Cox was also another guy where it was just like maybe he has another year or something, and very productive year. Brandon Graham had a very productive year, but this felt like
a really productive year.
Oh, absolutely. Like when you talk about going out on top, that's going out on top.
It's the best thing you could ever do.
Yeah,
like walk out the door. He's got to look. There's no money issues. There's no worries.
Well,
it's just he's set for life, and he is going to absolutely enjoy the rest of his life.
There's no worries for him, but there may be worries for the Philadelphia Eagles because
that's another issue.
The edge rusher position was a question going into last season, and Brandon Graham was part of that. Can he be productive at his age? Can Josh Sweat be a more consistent player? What are you going to get out of Bryce Huff? And that turned out to be minimal, and that's being kind. But now we have additional questions at the edge rusher position as Josh Sweat goes to the Cardinals and Brandon Graham. We now have the official retirement word from him, so we know you will be without him. We were operating under that assumption, but now you are facing the reality. And yesterday, we talked to Jeff McClain, who covers the Eagles for the Inquirer, and he dropped an interesting nugget on the edge rusher position and talked about how there could still be another huge move coming at edge rusher.
I still feel like there's a possibility of them doing something a little larger at the edge rusher position because, quite frankly, that's been the position and will continue to be the position that they're probably going to need to address the most this offseason because you have Josh Sweat leaving to the Cardinals, you have Brandon Graham most likely retiring, and you have Bryce Huff's situation, which, quite frankly, is not resolved, and I'm sure Howie Roseman would love to move him if he could.
Now, Johnny Journalism had a little bit of a scoop on the Azeez Ojulari signing.
Yeah, last week, talking to someone very well-placed within the Georgia football program, like really well-placed, said to me flat out, and we're talking about another issue, and said to me, yeah, I was like, well, how you like all your dogs? I bet you're loving that. And I was told, I heard you're getting another one this week and another one before camp. So immediately I thought draft.
Right.
And then immediately and true story, hung up the phone, called Andrew DiCecco. Immediately, before I called any one of you jabronis and told you what I was doing, I said, Andrew DiCecco, get on this. Who is it? Like, who's the dog? And Andrew looked at it immediately by the end of the conversation, just talking out, he goes, I guess Azeez Ojulari has to be the guy.
And he was right.
So then another one coming before camp, I didn't know whether to take that as draft or otherwise. It didn't sound to me like draft because draft's a crapshoot. You have no idea.
Right. If Malachi Starks is indeed a name the Eagles are interested in, who knows if he's going to be there at 32?
I don't think he'll be there at 32. So I think you'd have to move into I'm guessing mid-20s to go get him at the latest.
And they may.
They could be, but it's so then I immediately thought of a regular player. And we talked about this last week before the Ojulari signing. And to me, yesterday we saw the news, Connor.
Yeah.
We saw it fall. Yesterday, Jacksonville is shopping. Jacksonville is in the market. They are interested, and really, they're interested in trying to move off from Trayvon Walker. They're willing to do it. Former first overall pick, Trayvon Walker, they're fielding offers. New general manager, looking to set his own path. New coach. They're going to have a salary cap issue with Trayvon Walker down the line. Maybe they would just like to have a little more of a honeymoon period, sort of start over in their own way. 21 draft picks, or what is it for Howie, 2021? I got to tell you, that's what a new general manager wants.
Absolutely.
A new GM in Jacksonville wants the cachet in the draft because the first way that they're going to show that they're earning their bones is by going out there and drafting well.
Yeah.
I don't know what it would take to get Trayvon Walker, but I have a real good feeling that the Eagles are knee-deep in it.
Listen,
right now.
knee-deep. That would seem to point towards the reasoning that you used for the potential Azeez Ojulari move that did happen. So we've already seen that there is some legitimacy to what you have been hearing. We saw the report that Jacksonville's shopping him. All of this is starting to come together. So the Eagles, if you are looking for them to trade for Myles Garrett or looking for them to trade for Max Crosby, obviously neither of those opportunities worked out. Now you're looking at a situation where this looks more realistic than those ever
and
did.
Connor, it's such a better. This is so much better, and people are going to go, no, he's not Myles Garrett. Yeah, you know what he is? He's 7 years younger. He's 7 years younger. You are going to, if you trade for Trayvon Walker, you are giving. If you had gone for Myles Garrett, you're paying Myles Garrett for the 7 years of his prime that you didn't get. Trayvon Walker, 20 and a half sacks his last 2 years. You would be then paying for the prime that you're going to be knee-deep in. You're going to be bathing in it. I don't want to pay a defensive end or a pass rusher in his 30s. Like, unless he's been here and part of a productive thing. I don't want to bring in a guy and mortgage the future to do that. And by the way, pay him a ton more than you're going to pay Trayvon Walker.
Absolutely.
And Trayvon Walker, again, you can exercise the fifth-year option. You could get a 2-year test drive.
Could you imagine if this team walks on the field on Thursday night to start the NFL season and their edge rushers are Nolan Smith and Trayvon Walker with depth behind them
and Jalen Carter in the middle?
Yes, Josh Uche
and Baun and Nakobe Dean.
Yeah.
Hopefully Nakobe on opening night. Then that secondary. Connor, you said it yesterday. If they get Trayvon Walker, I will fully expect to be sitting next to you at another parade.
That would be amazing.
I will fully expect it.
Yeah.
Because the offense is set, and the only thing that could derail it is serious injury.
I mean, think about the edge rusher
That's the only
rotation.
thing that could derail it.
Like, the guys that you would have at the edge rusher position is, again, Trayvon Walker, Nolan Smith,
That's ridiculous.
Azeez Ojulari, Josh Uche. You would have depth in Jalix Hunt. You would have depth in Bryce Huff, who then the pressure would be entirely off of him. Now, Jeff McClain also brought up yesterday that Howie would love to move off that Bryce Huff contract if you could. Now, if they can, is the big if there, and we will see.
I don't know anybody's going to take it.
Right. Most likely, they probably will not be able to move that contract. If they can, they can.
My buddy Joe said to me the other day, he goes, I heard that maybe, they could trade for Hendrickson and trade them Bryce Huff. I'm like, who the hell's taking that contract, Joe?
Keep dreaming.
I said, come on, Joe. Stick to construction.
I wouldn't say that one's going to happen, but even if we assume that Bryce Huff is here, he's like the seventh guy in an edge rusher rotation where all the other guys are kind of monsters or have been monsters for at least a year of their career. Like, that would go from, hey, we're losing Josh Sweat and Brandon Graham to we have upgraded the position, losing two great players. Hey, the Eagles, this team just never, ever falls out of sync with what they're trying to do. I mean, they have such an ironclad approach to how they want to build teams. And sometimes it works out on the field.
It does.
And sometimes it doesn't. But that is a lot of contributing factors. Ultimately, they are true to the principles that they build a team through, and it's through the trenches, and it has paid dividends for this team, and they are doing it again in the wake of losing Brandon Graham to retirement, an all-time great Eagle. So Trayvon Walker, it's not a done deal yet.
No, it's not like there are going to be a lot of teams.
Yes.
They're going to pick up the phone and make that call. But no team has the draft capital to be able to go do it.
Absolutely.
And you wonder, with the clearing of cap space that Howie's been doing, is this something that he knew was on the horizon?
Certainly. Listen, if we're hearing about it, chances are Howie Roseman has heard about it long before us. So something to keep an eye on as the offseason progresses. If you believe Jeff McClain, which
I do believe Jeff McClain.
There could be another big move at edge rusher coming. And the reason that that's important is, of course, that you lost Josh Sweat, but Brandon Graham retiring yesterday is the big story of the day. We're going to hear from the people on what the Brandon Graham retirement meant to them yesterday and what your reaction was. 610-632-0975 is how you chime in on that one. And we're also going to continue that conversation about what made Brandon Graham so loved in this city. We'll talk about that further coming up. I'm Connor Thomas in for Andrew Salciunas. John Kincade alongside me. Brendan Gunn on the board. We're back from work Kincade and Salciunas after this here on 97.5 The Fanatic.
Mike Missanelli.
I feel there's going to be a little slippage. They won the Super Bowl.
news, Brandon Graham announces his retirement yesterday after 15 years, an all-time beloved Eagle, an all-time great Eagle, and I'm interested in what the fan base felt when he walked away. Now, we know this idea with, like, children, right? Your oldest, your first, you look at a certain way, and then sometimes there's a thought that the middle child gets left behind a little bit, or as you have
the
more.
baby? I'm the baby.
Exactly.
We get screwed.
Well,
we get screwed.
Brandon Graham is kind of in that situation when it comes to the big four Eagles retirements, right? You had Jason Kelce as the big first one of the four mainstays of that era, which are Jason Kelce, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, and Lane Johnson. Fletcher Cox was kind of overshadowed a little bit by Jason Kelce because they retired in the same offseason. Not that we didn't respect Fletcher Cox's career and still love him as an all-time Eagle as well.
Oh, he's beloved.
Jason Kelce kind of took the headlines last offseason.
He tends to do that.
Yes, he does.
He tends to be that guy.
And then not show up at the retirements for your other legends.
I don't know.
I got to tell you, I'm a little surprised.
I don't know what the guy had going on. I don't know.
No, we don't.
Yeah,
we don't know
so-
what he had going on, but I was a little disappointed with that.
Yeah. I don't see him as just like.
I know this, and I will say it. We never have to worry about who Brandon Graham's going to be rooting for in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
If the Eagles make the Super Bowl again.
Wow.
And I think that is absolutely not a cheap shot and not unfair.
I don't think
There
so.
will be
but
no worries about where his allegiances lie.
if
He
Brandon
is an
Graham's
Eagle.
brother played for a team in the
He's
AFC,
no way.
I think there might be.
Brandon Graham would be an Eagle.
Yeah.
And would be an Eagle.
But-
and he'd be rooting for the Eagles.
Obviously, he's not in the same situation exactly.
No, he's
as
not
what
in the
Jason
same.
Kelce
Not in the
did.
same.
But,
Don't that.
but my point in bringing that up is Brandon Graham being the third guy out of those big four players to retire. I mean, it feels, I don't want to say less emotional, because there were definitely people who were outpouring of love yesterday for Brandon Graham. We're going to do that today on the show. We have been doing that already on the show. But it's not the same when you start to get to the end of the big four retirements. And we're going to talk later on about looking forward to, well, Lane Johnson's twilight years.
I'm
as
not
a
looking
Philadelphia.
forward to that.
I mean, looking forward in the future, not
He's-
looking forward as a positive.
He might be the big. You know what's funny is Fletcher leaving, and I love Fletcher Cox and what he did. But there was Jalen Carter in the wings that he had groomed and everything like that. Brandon Graham, we already saw this year there are other guys that are ready to help do what BG did. I got to tell you, the thought of don't even talk to me. Don't even bring up Lane Johnson retiring.
Well, we're going
It
to.
scares the hell out of me.
We're going
It
to
really
talk
does.
about it more in the emotional sense than the football
Sure,
sense, because
please.
the hope is
Let's keep it that way because
Yeah.
it scares the hell out of me.
the Eagles
thinking
have
about
work to
that.
do to build on the offensive line in depth
Sure.
for that, as far as that's concerned. But I'm interested in what the people have to say about the Brandon Graham retirement. So, B-Gun, what do we have on the text line? 610-632-0975 is how you can join the show today. Your immediate reaction to Brandon Graham retiring yesterday. And also, we're going to continue this conversation about what was it that made him so loved? What was it special about Brandon Graham as a person, as a player, that made this city fall in love with him?
Yeah, we got Kyle in Quakertown checking in, saying, I met Brandon Graham on the field during a closed practice at the Link in 2023. There was a line of people for autographs. He spent 3 to 4 minutes talking to me and everybody else. I thanked him for Super Bowl 52, and he said he had to at least get one. He was so down to earth. I think that's what made him so loved.
I love that.
I also love that he got two. I'm sure for a while Brandon Graham was saying there, hey, man, at least I got my one. They got two. I mean, that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I brought up earlier, I want to get to this here. That's a great text from Kyle. I'm glad he got to have that experience with Brandon Graham while he was still playing. Now, it's not like the guy's just going to disappear off the face of the earth. You're going to hear from Brandon Graham again. And I'm sure you're going to hear from Brandon Graham again
I have a
soon.
feeling you're going to hear from him a lot.
Yes. It's hard not to. If
He's
you're
got a
in-
lot to say.
Yes, he does.
Thank you, 97.5.
Thank you, Brandon Graham.
Thank you, Brandon Graham.
But you brought up earlier the whole worry about, I hope Brandon Graham realized before just this year that he was an all-time beloved Eagle.
Like, is that too dramatic?
I don't think it is.
Like, I hope because he says, this year I started to feel it. I'm like, dude, I hope you felt it from February 4th, 2018. Yes, you can pull dates out of your head. February 4th, 2018 changed my life. It changed my life. It changed my happiness level in life. And that might sound stupid, but it did. I'm honest. It was the biggest moment of my sports fandom, and it paid off every bit of blood, sweat, and tears, energy, dollars that I'd ever spent.
Absolutely.
And I hope he felt that love and that adoration after that.
Now, I think he did, but I don't
Okay.
think he processed it as personal love or personal adoration. Now, something that Brandon Graham I don't think gets enough credit for because of how talkative he is, how much trash talk he does.
Okay.
If you ever listen to him talk trash, it's very rarely, I'm the man, you stink, this, that, and the other. He'll be like, oh, I'm coming for you 2-6 when he's playing Saquon Barkley. Oh, don't run this way. But there is this weird humbleness to the way that Brandon Graham conducted himself that you can find deeper than just the talkative personality. Normally when guys are, I'll say this, with love, loud mouths like that, you hear it in a talk themselves up type of way. Brandon Graham was more talking just to talk. And I do get the vibe when I hear him say, hey, like, I started to really realize this year how much this city, like, cared about me. I think it was because all the rest of his career, he was thinking of it, oh, they love this team. They love the Eagles. I don't think he ever took it as a personal, oh, they love me. I think when they won the first Super Bowl, it wasn't, oh, man, they're so glad I made that play. They're so glad the team won it. So I think he really justified the love that he felt at other points in his career as a love for the Eagles. And when you start to look at yourself individually when you're ready to hang it up and say, hey, I'm about to separate myself from this organization. I'm about to become Brandon Graham, the individual, not Brandon Graham, a piece of the Philadelphia Eagles. You start to allow yourself to really hear people talk about you as a person and a player and not take it so much as the team. So I think all it was he looked at his team adoration earlier on in his career and for the large part. And then when you come to terms with, hey, this could be my last ride, you start to allow yourself to think about you a little bit more. Does that make sense?
No, that makes a lot of sense. I think that makes a ton of sense.
Does that make you feel better about the comments he had?
It does. I just really hope it. And we see, I know that I'm going to see him like over time. And I hope now that he's done, I would have no problem telling him. But as a player, I would never say anything like that to him. The difference that he made. I hope everybody, though, tells him the difference that he made.
Yeah.
He was amazing.
It's that old expression from the Kenny Loggins or Kenny Rogers song, where you've got to go ahead and you can count the chips after. There's time for counting.
There'll be time enough for counting
when the
dealing's done.
I knew I was going to get to it eventually. There's time enough
spit that out.
For talking about the players and how much they mean to you when the dealing is done in the NFL.
Sure.
So this is a time where maybe people will feel more comfortable being so vocal and outpouring about their support of Brandon Graham. Not that we didn't during his career, because there were a lot of people that when Brandon Graham made that strip sack play in the Super Bowl, in Super Bowl 52, like you said, Johnny, life-changing for them.
It was life-changing for me. I know that.
He will always be the face of that moment where it was like, oh, my God, they actually are going to do this. And that's something that we will never experience again with another player because it was our first, and we talked about that yesterday. And it's such a special moment, and he was such a special player even outside of that moment. Speaking of being a special player outside of that moment, coming up next, we're going to do a difficult exercise, but one that'll be fun and one that'll give Brandon Graham the credit that I believe he deserves. What's your lasting memory of Brandon Graham if we take away everybody's lasting memory? We'll explain a little bit further, more coming up next. I'm Connor Thomas sitting in for Andrew Salciunas, John Kincade alongside me, Brendan Gunn on the board. Haley running the YouTube back there. You can check us out on the YouTube channel, 97.5 The Fanatic. We're back from work Kincade and Salciunas after this.
Fanatic Sports Update.
BG hangs them up. I'm Brendan Gunn with your Fanatic Sports Update. After 15 seasons and helping bring 2 Super Bowl titles to the city of Philadelphia, Eagles legend Brandon Graham called it a career yesterday. The 2010 first-round pick will always be remembered for his strip sack in Super Bowl 52 that helped secure the Birds their first Super Bowl championship, but he also did so much more on top of that. He played the most games in an Eagles uniform in franchise history, and he retires with the 3rd most sacks in team history as well. At his press conference yesterday, he had one last message for the city of Philadelphia.
While my time on the field is coming to an end, my love for this team and city will never fade. Philadelphia and everybody, from the bottom of my heart, I just want to thank y'all. EAGLES, Eagles. Fly, Eagles, fly. My last one. BG out, baby.
The Sixers continue on their road trip tonight with their 3rd of 6 straight away from the Wells Fargo Center. Tonight is in Oklahoma City to take on the Thunder. Tip-off in that one's at 8, and you can listen to that game live right here on The Fanatic. And the Flyers, they remain idle for a second straight night tonight, but they're back in action tomorrow down in Washington to take on the Capitals and Alexander Ovechkin. This update was brought to you by Natural Lawn of America. Get free seeding every year. Call 800-FREE-SEED now. I'm Brendan Gunn on the home of the 76ers and the Flyers, 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com.
Bill Colarulo. Even if it is a step back year.
playing the edge rusher position. You know what? You know how long Brandon Graham played? He came in as a defensive end, and he ended his career as an edge rusher. They changed the name of the damn position over the course of his career, started calling it something different. And he had a whole bunch of moments in between.
You know why that was, right? Do you know why they changed it?
Why is it?
For free agency.
Really?
Yeah. For stats to be able to, guys being able to, don't list me as a linebacker.
Yeah.
I'm an edge rusher, so I need to be paid differently. So the agents and the Players Association created the new designation.
And now it messes up the whole franchise tag, which we talked about earlier in the offseason.
And they had to do that too.
Yeah, which is...
Design, if someone's an edge rusher, they have a higher franchise tag number than somebody who is a linebacker.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be in charge of the NFL, but I feel like I have a couple things that I would tweak if I was. But when you look at the moments that Brandon Graham has had, and we're also taking your reaction on why he was so loved in this city, which I think it's a combination of a whole bunch of things, from personality to play to work ethic to toughness to community work that he did there. But there's something
Can't
more
do much
to
better
it.
than he's done.
No, honestly, if you built a career out, Brandon Graham as a Philadelphia Eagle may have had the best one, right? So far. We'll see what Lane Johnson, because his career's not done.
Well, you're talking about 2 Super Bowls.
Exactly.
Just there, Lane Johnson has a chance to eclipse him.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that Lane Johnson's still playing on a loaded team. But it's unbelievable.
There's only, 2 other players in Eagles franchise history that have 2 Super Bowls. It's Brandon Graham. It is Rick Lovato, who's no longer
who was scapegoated out of town.
And Jake Elliott.
I'll still tell you.
I don't think he was scapegoated.
I'm telling you right now. There is no way he walked away from the payday that he's got at this point in his career. There's no way. And I'll gladly say I'm wrong, and I'll find out the answer. I'm telling you right now, there's no way he's walking away from that cush job, the amount of money.
Yeah, Jake Elliott making the post instantaneously.
Yeah.
He's got a little guilt there.
All right.
I'm telling you right now.
We're going to talk to Andrew DeCecco.
He
on
got
tomorrow's
scapegoated.
show.
I'm telling you right now. There's no way he's walking away from that payday.
Yeah.
When he still could have. He could easily do that job another 5 years.
We'll ask DeCecco what he's heard from inside the building on the long snapper position to see if there's anything more to that there. Because if someone will know, DeCecco will know.
I think Baltimore did the same thing.
Oh, did they?
I think the Ravens, one of our listeners sent me a note yesterday and goes, hey, look what the Ravens did.
Yeah.
Their kicker has a bad year. And they got rid
of it. It's a touchy subject up there.
I think they got rid of their long snapper, too.
We'll discuss with DeCecco, because I think it may be coincidence.
No, goats don't make that noise. What does a goat make? I don't know what goats make.
I don't know. I'm not great with the
What does a goat
noise.
make? Gun, you don't know?
I think they
bat, right?
Yeah, I think so.
No, I thought that was a sheep.
I think goats make that noise.
There you go.
We'll have to ask Brandon Graham, who
we'll find
is
out.
One of the goats of Philadelphia Eagles edge rushers. But this is going to be a tough exercise for a lot of people. And you're listening to 97.5 The Fanatic, WPEN and WPEN HD1, Burlington, Philadelphia, a Beasley Media Group station, broadcasting live from the Comcast Business Studio, powering possibilities. What is your lasting memory of Brandon Graham? The moment that you're going to think of if we take away the moment that everybody's going to think of. The strip sack. So
they take that off the table.
Yes, because he had other great moments in his career. Now, none of them bigger than the strip sack in Super Bowl 52 of Tom Brady that led to the cementing of the first Lombardi in Philadelphia Eagles history. But this guy played 15 years.
Which is crazy.
And he's got moments upon moments upon moments. And my question to people out there, 610-632-0975, we'll open this up to listeners as well. What is the next moment you think about? The moment outside of the strip sack that will be your lasting memory of Brandon Graham? It could be personal. It could be on the field. It could be off the field.
And some people have the personal one.
We already heard from a guy, Kyle, on the text line who said he got a chance to meet him on the field and said it was an amazing experience for him. So I'm interested to see where people go with this. Johnny, do you have one? Because I know that first moment means so much to you.
Well, that's the one. I mean, that's the one that totally just changed everything as far as it's the one. I remember that, to me, I love the watching all the stuff. I watch NFL Network probably more than anyone should.
Yeah.
I enjoy the NFL Network. If something's not on, my wife will watch HGTV. I'll put on NFL Network and watch some of the old videos and things like that. I think my memory of him, the longest memory of him, is just going to be there is a NFL Network or an NFL Films where just the best of his trash talk
Oh my God, that's such a great
And it's
great
around
pick.
6-7 minutes of Brandon Graham clowning people, and he's literally telling people, "Oh man, you're not having the best day, brother. You're not having the best day." But you know what? I see him a quarter and a half still on the clock, quarter and a half still on that clock, and he's chirping. He's going, "Man, it's a long day. The couch is going to feel good tonight.
Yeah.
It's gonna." And he's just taunting but subtly. Nothing literally profane. Nothing that you could sit a kid in front of this entire stretch and watch it.
Right.
And you'd laugh at some of it.
Dude, he's trash talk, I believe, multiple. I remember George Bush for sure, but I think multiple presidents in person to their face ahead of a football game. Like, just seeing them on the field. Because I remember Bush had to have been down in Texas somewhere. I don't know if it was a Texans game, a Cowboys game, or whatever, and he was doing the coin toss. And Brandon Graham, of course, always a captain for the Birds and out there. And he's talking trash to him, saying, "We're going to whoop the Cowboys." Like, he talked to everybody and anybody. That is a great pick by you, John Kincade.
I like that. That's going to be my memory.
Yeah, B Gun. Another BG. This has got to be a tough day for you.
The best active BG in the community.
That's a fair point. Well, let's say actively working right now.
He's actually working.
BG, Brandon Graham, is still active in the community, I'm sure, even with his retirement. Brendan Gunn, what's your lasting memory outside of the strip sack?
I think it's just the smile on his face, and it takes me back to week 2 in about 2021, I want to say, against the 49ers. I was at that game. He ruptured his Achilles in that game. Everybody started chanting BG, BG on his way out, but he had not a smile on his face that he was happy it happened. Obviously, he wasn't, but he was ready to take on what was going to come next in it. And he always did that. He embraced what was next with a smile on his face. And I think that's a story for people in life in general. Because sometimes people think like sports are just sports and they're silly. But when you see guys like that who go through everything he had to do coming out of the draft, being labeled a bust and just working his ass off with his head down, I think that's what makes him so loved. And those kind of moments stick out in my mind.
That was home opener 2021, Nick Sirianni's home opener, when he got that injury.
Yep.
And the first game at home that Sirianni's coaching, and he loses one of his veteran leaders.
Right. And
that was a tough loss that day. That was a tough loss.
He had the 55 on his visor for the rest of the year. And that's when we first started figuring out, hey, this guy's a little quirky. But
Quite a bit.
I mean, listen, that's a great, great moment that shows you the fan base's love for him. I think I'm going to go with a more recent one. And this may just be because it's fresh in my mind. But him absolutely decleating Matthew Stafford this season in the regular season.
In L.A.
When he got hurt in that game, too.
Yes, he did.
Do we know when he got hurt? Did it ever get said, when that actually happened?
That it ever came out.
No, because it was so abrupt after the game. The reporters were almost took it as a joke when he said he was done for the season. And he wasn't.
Well, it was a joke because he played in the Super Bowl.
See?
But the reason why that's one that I'm always going to think about is, of course, he was impactful in the Super Bowl in a way that you press the pocket and you allow other guys to get home because you're causing people to commit to blocking you. I don't want to say he had a crazy great game in the Super Bowl, and you shouldn't have expected him to, but he was productive, right? But he didn't have a Super Bowl play this past time around where you're going to look at and be like, oh, wow, that was the Brandon Graham impact play. He was just more in the margins. That's the last big play of his career. And that's the one that when I think about the longevity that he had at his position, that we're going to be looking at and say, oh, wow, he really did it to the end where he was a monster start to finish.
He wasn't – what I'll always respect, too, Brandon Graham wasn't hanging on for one more year. He wasn't hanging on for the idea to do to have a farewell tour.
No.
Just to be loved. He was doing it.
And guess what? None of these guys – it's crazy because we saw it with Jason Peters, and he's going to be brought up later in the show as a comparison to what's going on with Brandon Graham and how we feel about players emotionally when they hang it up. But Jason Peters was one of those guys that hung around too long. I think a lot of Eagles fans feel that way.
I think he did, and but honestly, I never felt that way here.
No, but
you know what I mean.
I'm talking about Chicago and Dallas,
bouncing around Seattle.
Yes,
it almost hurt me to see him holding on. But obviously, some people have different monetary desires, and if someone's willing to give you the money and you still want to play, I guess you'll take it.
Jason Kelce went out playing at a high level. Fletcher Cox went out playing at a high level. Brandon Graham went out playing at a high level. I find it hard to believe Lane Johnson is not going to go out 40 years down the line, we hope.
That's why I say 2.
But he's going to go out playing at a high level, I'd imagine. And to have 4 guys means so much to this franchise and have all of them continue to be productive into their late years of their career and all with the Philadelphia Eagles. How lucky were we? Like, how lucky is this generation of Philadelphia Eagles fans to have these guys and to be able to experience it this way? And Brandon Graham was an important part of that conversation. Jason Kelce was I'll talk to the media and I'll voice what the team is feeling, but he wasn't as boisterous as a player for a lot of his career about it.
I think that, honestly, I believe that Brandon Graham was more the spokesperson.
Absolutely.
I think Brandon Graham was very much like Reese Hoskins. Reese Hoskins wasn't the greatest player in the locker room, but Reese Hoskins, I know from that Phillies clubhouse, he was the guy who the Jim Salisbury's and all them would go to.
Yeah.
The Jason Starks would go to. They want to know the status of the clubhouse. It was him.
Exactly. And you're going to hear a cut from Brandon Graham's retirement press conference yesterday, talking about later on in the show. That locker room is closed when I'm done, because he was always the last guy to talk. And as soon as he's done, he's like, okay, guys, time to go. Time for the team. Like, he just had that type of control over what was going on with the Philadelphia Eagles. And we should always love him for the way that he conducted himself in this city. Now, I'm
55 will always love you.
Yes, he will. We might need a new drop as far as that's concerned. I'm interested if anyone else has some picks on that conversation. If you take away the strip sack, what is your next lasting memory of Brandon Graham? Whether it's the personality, whether it's a personal thing for you, a time you met him, whether it's a play in a game. We had a bunch of different ones just between the three of us. So we'll look for the answers on that. 610-632-0975 on the phone line and on the text line. Coming up next, though, we're going to talk about the emotion of the day yesterday and why, to myself and John, it might have felt strangely less moving than we expected. And I don't think that says anything about Brandon Graham. I think it actually says a lot about the Philadelphia Eagles and what they accomplished this last year. We'll explain further coming up next. This is Kincade Salciunas here, 97.5 The Fanatic.
Tyrone Johnson.
Thank you to Parks for sponsoring the 7 o'clock hour of Kincade and Salciunas. You could play to win.
Love you, Bet Parks.
Absolutely. You can play to win in the 97.5 The Fanatics Knockout Tournament. This year's tournament is coming up on Wednesday, March 26th. It's your chance to shoot hoops on the Sixers court. Yes, a week from today will be our knockout tournament. I got to start getting some shots up. You could be the one to knock out one of the Fanatic hosts or producers or win the whole thing for bragging rights and a spot in next year's event. So here's how to win. We're doing this through the rest of this week, and I believe we may even do some next week. But listen weekdays for a keyword during each show. Kincade and Salciunas, the Mike Missanelli Show, and the best show ever. You enter that keyword on the contest page at 975thefanatic.com by the end of the day. We'll pick a winner from each show every day, so you're going to get 2 tickets for the game that night versus the Wizards. And one of you is going to be able to play knockout on the court. The guests can hang out and watch. All sponsored by Barlow Chevrolet in Delran for honest pricing and dedicated service. Visit 975thefanatic.com for complete details. Today's keyword is tip. T-I-P.
What is it? T-I-P.
It's tip. T-I-P. All right.
There you go.
And we also have a great name for our winner yesterday.
Who's that?
Our winner yesterday was Johnny Cartagena.
Johnny Cartagena?
That's a hell of a name.
Wait a minute, that doesn't sound like a real...
I know. I feel like that's a made-up name.
That seems like a guy from an Adam Sandler movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's a character.
Yes, 100%.
By the way, I saw Happy Gilmore 2's coming out.
Yes, it is. I'm excited for that.
I can't wait to see it. Hey, good Bet Park story quick. So it's tournament week. So I'm like, okay, North Carolina was going to steamroll last night. So I'm like, Carolina's taking all this heat about being even in, getting an invite and everything. I said, easiest bet on the board, bet on Carolina, lay whatever points you got to lay. They're going to go out and make a statement. So I pull up my Bet Parks app. I forgot to ever cash out Super Bowl Sunday winnings. I never went back to my app.
Oh, wow. So it's all just sitting in there.
I don't tend to gamble a lot after football.
Right.
And then it comes to where I'll go, NCAA tournament's the next thing. I pulled up all my winnings from Super Bowl Sunday I hadn't cashed out.
Got to do that,
I was
Johnny.
like,
that's a nice
found
thing.
money. It was found money.
Isn't that better than earned money?
I said it was good. Yeah, found money's good.
Yes,
fun.
it absolutely is.
Yeah, it's fun to work for a living, but it's more fun when somebody else just gives it to you.
Well, congrats on your success.
I love that. I didn't cash out. It's been sitting there. Could have used it.
Now, speaking of working for a living, a guy we love in the city does not really have to do that anymore. Now, Brandon Graham's not just going to sit on his couch for the rest of his life. But he is retiring from professional football as a player. I say as a player pointedly because we could see him in the media. I don't know if coaching is in his future. I don't know.
They can't afford him to coach.
Well,
he's made too much money to want to go grind 18-hour days.
Who knows what he wants to do? We'll see what the future holds for Brandon Graham. I'm not saying right now.
How many players that have made in his tax bracket have decided to become coaches?
Yeah, not many.
You will not find many because it's too much work.
But I'm just saying, like, we don't know what's next for him. We haven't heard the last of Brandon Graham. But when his retirement announcement happened yesterday, I think you and I felt kind of similarly. I'm going to let you explain your feeling, but we're going to talk about the emotion of the day yesterday, and it felt less moving than Jason Kelce's retirement for me. And it's not that I don't love Brandon Graham. I think there are a couple of factors here, and the biggest one is this. Brandon Graham talked during his retirement press conference yesterday about how he's happy to go out as a champion. Take a listen.
Well, you know what? If I ain't make it back to the Super Bowl, man, I probably wouldn't be up here right now. I promise you. I'll be begging to come on back one more. But I was happy to be able to make it back, to play with my guys, to put that uniform on one last time in the big moment, big stage, and to where we went out there and performed. I couldn't ask for nothing sweeter than this. And I'm thankful to have came back and to be able to play my last game, like my coach say, with some integrity and play good at that. And so I can always hang my hat on that, where played good in my last game, went out on my own terms, and went out a champion.
I think that was the difference for me.
Yep.
Exactly what Brandon Graham said. Him walking off yesterday wasn't as emotional because when Jason Kelce walked off, he didn't walk off a champion. He walked off after a huge, disgraceful season.
Same with Fletcher Cox, who retired
where honestly, he didn't play that well. Jason Kelce did not have a great final year. So I sort of felt like, damn.
Yeah.
You know, and he I remember the zombie of Jason Kelce walking along the sidelines in the third quarter of that Tampa game.
Yep.
Where he was shaking his head going, what the hell's going on here?
And that sucked to see.
Right. because he was so great
Right.
and so accomplished. I didn't want that to be the way he went out.
Yeah, and he didn't leave anything more, Jason Kelsey, to be accomplished.
No,
he
no,
didn't
no,
walk
no, no.
away
Absolutely
with unfinished
not.
business at all.
But he didn't have his best season.
Right.
And he did not, at that point, to me, like he was walking off shaking his head, walking on that sideline on Monday Night Football, shaking his head.
Yeah.
And to me, that hurt more. Brandon Graham walking off with another ring and a parade and knowing the endless possibilities that are there for him. I felt much different about his retirement. It was much more joyous than somber.
That's exactly what it is.
Plus, I didn't have to shave after even though I did yesterday. I didn't have to shave after Brandon Graham's speech.
Wow.
Because I mean, seriously, that was a little more succinct.
I imagine Jason Kelsey had more to say because.
I guarantee he still had more.
Well, I'm just saying he had more to say than Brandon Graham because of those circumstances we were just talking about.
Could be.
Same with Fletcher Cox, and Fletcher Cox is not a big talker when it comes to his appearances with the media or anything like that.
By the way, I told you I passed him before the Packer game downstairs, and I didn't recognize him.
Yeah. He lost a lot of weight, man.
He's slimmed down so much, and he looks like a freaking $1 million. Not that he was always an imposing man, though.
Right.
I passed by him. I'm like, oh my God, that's Fletch.
Yeah, good for Fletch.
I was like, dude, he looks like $1 million.
We'll see what BG does in his post-retirement diet years that seem to happen to every lineman that plays in the NFL at a high level. But I think that's it, right? He summited the mountaintop. He went out as a champion. He went out with such a perfect story and at a perfect time that this one was more palatable to me emotionally. Not that I miss it, Brandon Graham any less than Jason Kelsey. It's that, okay, he got to get a second one. He's going out in a perfect spot. So you feel good for Brandon Graham and what he accomplished, and part of you still feel sad for the fact that you're not going to watch 55 play for the Philadelphia Eagles now, and that jersey will probably never be worn again for the Philadelphia Eagles. So are you feeling what we're feeling, or was this one that maybe affected you more than previous major retirements for the Philadelphia Eagles in your lifetime? We'll continue that conversation, 610-632-0975. Now, we're sparsing in some conversations about other topics today. It's not just all Brandon Graham. And, Johnny, you think that there is a sophomore slump coming for a player that would affect the Philadelphia Eagles significantly?
Is there?
Well, we'll see. Coming up, we'll make an argument whether or not there will be. It's Kincade Salciunas continues after this here on 97.5 The Fanatic.
Fanatic Sports Update.
An Eagles legend goes out on top. I'm Brendan Gunn with your Fanatic Sports Update. After 15 seasons and helping bring 2 Super Bowl titles to the city of Philadelphia, Eagles legend Brandon Graham called it a career yesterday. The 2010 first-round pick will always be remembered for his strip sack in Super Bowl 52 to help secure the Birds their first Super Bowl championship, but he did so much more on top of that. He played the most games in an Eagles uniform in franchise history, and he retires with the 3rd most sacks in team history. At his press conference yesterday, he had one last message for the city of Philadelphia.
While my time on the field is coming to an end, my love for this team and city will never fade. Philadelphia and everybody, from the bottom of my heart, I just want to thank y'all. EAGLES, Eagles. Fly, Eagles, fly. My last one. BG out, baby.
The Sixers continue their road trip tonight with their 3rd of 6 straight away from the Wells Fargo Center. Tonight's in Oklahoma City to take on the Thunder. Tip-off is at 8, and you can listen to that game live right here on The Fanatic. And the Flyers, they remain idle tonight for a second straight night, but they're back in action tomorrow down in Washington to take on the Capitals. And the next week, the Phillies are down there in Washington to start their season against the Nationals. This update was brought to you by Rapid Radios. Rapid Radio, our instant push-to-talk walkie-talkies offering national LTE coverage for a limited time. Go to rapidradio.com now for 60% off and free UPS shipping. Add code radio and get an extra 5% off. I'm Brendan Gunn on the home of the 76ers and the Flyers, 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com.
Vacation? Business trip? Don't worry.
that we've been talking about throughout the program is the Brandon Graham retirement announcement yesterday, hanging it up. He is the latest of the Eagles legends, the big four of Fletcher Cox, Jason Kelce, Brandon Graham himself, and Lane Johnson. The latest to hang it up. Lane Johnson is now the last remaining soldier from that group of leadership that we've known for what feels like ever for the Philadelphia Eagles.
So does he get a third because he stays around the longest? Does Lane end up with the extra ring that he could constantly just, with the other two, be like, I
got one more.
Hey, Fletch, you got one. You know, it's Jason Kelce, you got one. Oh, really? Well, I got two, Brandon Graham. And then Lane just rolls in and goes, well, I got a third.
Screw that. Why doesn't he have four? Why doesn't he have five?
Great.
Let's go get more for Lane Johnson. He's got more in the tank.
I think he's got two.
Yeah.
I think he's got two.
I think
I'm not trying to be greedy.
Yes,
with Lane.
I feel you. And whenever he's ready to hang it up, like he will get the same love that we're giving all these other guys. But I think he's got another ring somewhere in there. And the competitiveness of Lane Johnson, I think he'd love to have that over those guys that he played with for such a long time. But those are emotional moments when you see guys hang it up that you've watched pretty much. There are people that are, Brandon Graham played here for 15 years, right? So let's say you become a active sports fan at the age of 10, where you really start to comprehend enough to be like, okay, I know these players, I know the game a little bit. Like I start to root for this team more than just like wearing the shirt and saying go Eagles. You could be 25 years old and the entirety of your sports fandom as a Philadelphia Eagles fan was Brandon Graham on the field.
Sure,
right?
it is.
Like there are people
You
that
had 20. You had 25 football. Those are the 25 football seasons. By the way, we won our second Super Bowl in the 25 seasons since Andy Reid began his career.
Right. Like,
and this, you're spoiled, rotten brats. Honestly,
Yes.
all of you. I'm saying that with love, as like a loving father to all of you. You're spoiled, rotten brats,
and we're lucky to be.
You are. No, we're really so happy.
But emotionally too, it's got to be tough for people who are in that mid-20s to maybe like early 30s age bracket where I find myself, where it's just like, man, all I've really known as an adult is Brandon Graham as a member of the Philadelphia Eagles. Like he is one of the constants of this team, and we went through that same stuff with Kelce and Cox, and we will with Lane Johnson. It's a tough day.
That's why I roll my eyes at every single one of you on social media that does we can't have nice things in Philly, man. Like Joel Embiid out for the year. We can't have nice things in Philly. You've had freaking nothing but nice things with the best team in town, the one that means the most. And when it's like, man, we're tortured, man. We just can't get nice things. You've had nothing but just great things. You have been eating having lobster and filet mignon for your entire lives with the most important team in this town. When I grew up, it was freaking Ponderosa. And someone else is picking over the mashed potatoes before you go to them. Don't tell me that, waiting for the new plate of ribs to go out. I'm tired of it. Don't ever use it again. We got second Super Bowl now. Be quiet. Zip it. We have nice things here. We got 2 Super Bowls in the last decade, for God's sakes.
By the way, I love Brandon Graham sitting up there on the podium with the 2 Super Bowl trophies, the 2 Lombardis.
That was fantastic.
On either side. I mean, you can't do it any better than that.
That was awesome.
BG, what do we have on the text line about BG Brandon Graham?
Yeah, no name on this one, but he says the lasting memory he has of BG is telling Jalen Hurts to tell the media to get off his back after winning the Super Bowl. 15 years from now, Jalen may be an all-time great, but the media's view of him changed, and BG helped preserve that.
I don't know that was like a catalyst for change in how the media views Jalen Hurts. I think simply winning the game was the catalyst for change. But that's something that I'm glad that texter is going to remember because, listen, Jalen Hurts is a guy that for the leadership we saw him display in college and the leadership we saw him display in his career here in Philadelphia, there have been pitfalls.
There have been.
And he is not the world's easiest guy to root for. He is in some ways, right? There are some ways where
if you're just rooting for talent, he is.
Yes, and the robot personality, I think some people love the guy that just like literally goes out there and doesn't care about anything else but winning football games. And some people want their players to have a little more personality than that.
I prefer that.
Yeah.
But
you prefer the robot or the personality?
No, I prefer the personality. But I know how he was programmed playing in Nick Saban's. I saw that stuff up close and personal, and they all do it.
Yeah, exactly.
To a different degree. Like Landon Dickerson was also groomed in that, not as long, but Landon Dickerson was part of that. Landon Dickerson doesn't have the robotic personality.
And it's different
but
as
Landon
a lineman.
Dickerson isn't going to give you anything he doesn't want to give you because he was raised well in college football.
Yeah, and different personality as a lineman who's not the face of the team, right? You're not asked to
Sure.
answer the tough questions as often as the quarterback is. My point in just saying that is it is great that Brandon Graham, knowing the personality he has, will go to a guy like Jalen Hurts and say, hey, I know he's not going to say it, so I'll say it for him. That's the great thing about having a vocal teammate like Brandon Graham is when you have a less vocal teammate or leader or maybe a coach or something like that, he will be the guy that says the stuff that guy wants to say so they don't have to say it. And that is an invaluable thing in a locker room to build trust with your teammates. Now, speaking of leaders of teams, is there a sophomore slump coming for a certain leader of a team in the NFC East that people are looking at as the direct competitor for the Eagles this year? Johnny?
I want to try this on B-Gun. B-Gun, do you think that there will be a step back, a sophomore slump for a guy like named Jaden Daniels?
I could see it. I mean, I do think he's special, but I think there's an adjustment period for everybody in the NFL, especially quarterbacks. When you get a whole tape a year or a whole year of tape on you, I think that there's guys like Vic Fangio that can figure you out. They've been in the league for 30 years. You've been in for 2.
That they can find a way to help continue.
And you saw Jalen Hurts do it. He was on an MVP trajectory in 2022, not necessarily his rookie year, but his second year as a starter.
Yeah, and that's what
then they figured it out, and then he had to answer to their punchback. I think Jaden Daniels is going to have to do that.
Here's the thing, though, is the first year for Jaden Daniels was spectacular as a starter. The first year for Jalen Hurts was not. Jalen Hurts took that, grew on it, and had a great second year, like a outstanding, wild second year. Step back third year, Super Bowl champion fourth year as a starter, first 4 years as a starter. To me, I keep hearing it. It's come up in conversation that Jaden Daniels is going to have that sophomore slump. I'm going to tell you both right now, I'll bet against it.
Really?
Yeah. I'm going to bet against it. I do believe that there will be more bumps in the road for him.
Like slight regression, but not a
slight
slump.
regression. I do not see Jaden Daniels taking a huge step back or having like one of those big pitfall seasons. He's not C.J. Stroud. And I called it last summer, so I'm not. And I called Jordan Love, so I'm not. I called my shot. Stand in the batter's box, I called it. I'm calling the opposite this year on Jaden Daniels. I think Jaden Daniels is going to continue to ascend, but there will be more bumps in the road. There will be more, as B-Gun's talking about, a year of tape on you.
Yeah, 2 steps forward, 1 steps back, rather than 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, and then you have to try and recreate it.
Whereas I think Jalen Hurts did that. He had the mediocre first year, second year, dominant, third year, not that good, struggling, a lot of turnovers and everything, fourth year, spectacular. And to me, I think if you're counting on a sophomore slump, in this division, I think you're calling the wrong quarterback because I do not believe Jaden Daniels is going to have that step back.
Interesting. Okay.
Do you?
I lean more towards he will.
Okay, what are you talking about? Are you talking about, would you ever call it what you believe you're going to see, regression?
I would call it regression.
Okay.
I don't think I'd call it a slump, but I think it's going to be more featured than what you're saying it's going to be.
Okay.
Like, I think Washington may be a 7 or 8 win football team. And remember,
wow. Okay.
Yeah,
that's bold and beautiful.
Guess what? You play tough divisions this year if you're an NFC East team. And they are playing a second-place schedule. They're not playing the schedule that they played last year.
They're playing the very similar schedule to the Eagles.
Exactly. And they are a lesser team, even though I do think they've improved in the short term based on this offseason. I don't know what they are with tape on Jaden. Like, Jaden Daniels carried that damn team. Like, he made something out of the corpse of Zach Ertz, all due respect, because we love him in this city.
He did.
And Terry McLaurin had a great
back,
year.
By the way. Here's who they play away, Connor. They play Green Bay away.
Tough game.
Kansas City away.
Tough game.
L.A. Chargers away.
Tough game.
Vikings away.
Tough game.
Dolphins away.
Tough game.
Potential.
I still think that's a tough game.
Falcons away. Potential.
Tough game. Miami's much, much better in Miami.
They play the Lions at home. They play the Bears at home.
Like, I'm telling you, if the Eagles have a tough schedule, it's tougher on Washington because they're not as good as a football
That's
team.
an interesting way to look at it.
That's a discussion
That's
that
a
we'll
good way to
get
look at
into
it. Yeah, we got all
closer to the
summer on
season.
that.
Yeah,
but
we got plenty of time.
But it's there for you.
So I do think he takes a little bit more of a step back than you're saying, but I don't think it's a C.J. Stroud, what happened to this guy step back. So we'll see. But Jaden Daniels is kind of the linchpin of the division. He's the turning point that everything rotates around. If he's great again, Washington's a contender. If not, Hey, Eagles, congrats on being back-to-back division champs for the first time since the early 2000s.
Quite a while.
Coming up next, we are going to get into a conversation. I told you we'd mention Jason Peters a little later on in the show. I almost said episode. I guess it is if you're watching on YouTube. Do you judge players by when they retire? I'll break down exactly what I'm asking and why. Coming up next, it's Kincade Salciunas. I'm Connor Thomas, in for Andrew Salciunas. John Kincade alongside me. Brendan Gunn on the board. Haley running the YouTube. We're back for more here on 97.5 The Fanatic.
Mike Missanelli, Bill Connor.
Shefter coming up at 7:55.
I've heard of him.
Yeah, he's this NFL insider guy. I think he's on ESPN.
He's got a good name.
Yes, obviously.
Check out his annual payday.
Oh, my goodness.
Dude.
Yeah.
Dude, it's awesome.
He earns it. And
he does. It's relentless.
Yes. Dude,
it's a relentless job. I would never want it.
I got to tell you. So
I could never focus like that.
I know how busy he is just in general. We talk to him all the time. I know what his schedule was like generally, but I put on notifications for Adam Schefter's tweets when free agency started, and I just haven't gotten around to taking them off. And this dude, I don't know how many tweets he has all time, but he's got to be up there for all-time amount of tweets for people on that website. It's just constant news that he's always breaking or responding to or putting out thoughts on, and we love that we get the chance to talk to him every Wednesday here on Kincade and Salciunas, so he will join us coming up at 7:55, and we got a lot of great stuff to get into with him. Well, I'll talk to him about the Trayvon Walker conversation and what's new with that. We will talk to him about the signings that we saw the Eagles make with Azeez Ojulari. I don't believe we got a chance to talk to him about Josh Uche.
No, I don't think we did either.
So we've got some stuff to get into there. Brandon Graham's retirement, of course. This is a great day to have Adam Shefter on, so you're going to want to be listening coming up at 7:55.
And you know where I'm going.
Where are you going?
Trayvon Walker.
Oh, well, yeah, of course.
I'm absolutely going in that direction because, well, there you go.
No doubt. I understand why you want him. I understand why Eagles fans want him. I'm not against you in that, so we will see how realistic it could be. But the big news that we've been reacting to here in Philadelphia today is the fact that Brandon Graham retired yesterday. He hung it up. 15 years as an Eagle, every single one of them wearing the midnight green or Kelly green in recent years.
Sure.
And he was just the consummate professional throughout. He was great on the field. He was great off the field. He was great for his teammates, an awesome locker room presence, tight with reporters. I mean, he did everything the right way, and he got 2 Super Bowls for his efforts. He got a numerous amounts of Pro Bowls, and he put together a sterling record that will land him in the Eagles' Ring of Honor for sure, and maybe even a fringe Hall of Fame campaign for him. So we will see how that plays out. He'll be in one of those edge guys that I'm not talking about the position.
Correct.
Where we'll see how that plays out.
I don't think it'll work out, but who knows?
He's close enough to say, like, at least we're considering that.
Discussion. I don't believe it'll happen, but they're so numbers oriented.
But even if he doesn't make it to Canton, here in Philadelphia, Brandon Graham will always be a legend. And I think part of that is how he went out. When we look back in 10, 15, 20 years, you're going to remember the offseason after the Super Bowl as a lot of things based on how some of these players end up playing, how Kevin Patullo ends up coaching. But one thing we're going to always tie to this offseason post-Super Bowl is Brandon Graham hung it up, and that's always going to make you think about him going out on top. So do you judge players by when they retire? Like, if guys hang on too long, Jason Peters, do you look at them differently, like, all time? Does it diminish how much it hits you when they hang it up? Like, do you say, okay, I love this player when they were playing for my team, I love what they were able to accomplish, but they bounced around to other organizations after, and their level of play really dropped off, and I don't look at it the same way when they hang it up as maybe you would if a player retired on top like Brandon Graham, or maybe even a little bit earlier. Like, how much does timing of retirement affect the legacy of a player?
When I saw Jason Peters' retirement notice, I was like, about time. It fell with a thud. I was like, dude, should have been years ago. Should have been a couple years ago. And so it absolutely affects me. It doesn't affect me at all, though, to know that at the arguably one of the most important positions on your football team, quarterback, left tackle. I mean, it's a combination you've got to get right if you want to try to win championships. That he was spectacular here, plug and play for a decade or so of great seasons. So that doesn't change my love and affection and respect, but it definitely is like, dude, hang it up.
And I think everybody feels that way. Like, I don't think there's anyone that saw Jason Peters playing out the final years of his career across the NFL, numerous different organizations saying, oh, great, I'm glad I still get to watch Jason Peters play football. And it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't change the way we view him and his tenure with the Eagles or who he is as a football player, his legacy. He'll be in Canton one day, undoubtedly. But it does kind of change the way you look at the guy when he retires. And you might think I'm going somewhere with this where it's just like, oh, I'm glad Brandon Graham retired at the time he did. No. Not exactly where I'm going. Maybe it shouldn't affect the way that we think about him as much as it does. Well, I want you to hear this from Brandon Graham because he talked yesterday about knowing when it's time to walk away and how difficult that decision was for him.
You don't really know, because I mean, the competitor in me, I had to really talk to myself a little bit to see, because of course I'm ending on my own terms, and I'm thankful for this moment because I am gonna miss everything about it, man. Right now I'm talking that stuff, but I'm gonna miss y'all too, because we all got a job to play, and y'all made it fun, And as y'all know, when I'm done, locker rooms close, as always.
I told you you're going to hear that from when I'm done, locker rooms close, as always. But if Brandon Graham had such a hard time talking to himself, could you imagine? Like, it's easy to put ourselves in his shoes not having played professional football. But if I was a two-time Super Bowl champion that was one of the greats in my franchise history, played 15 years, all with the same organization, blew out my triceps twice in the season, once in the final game in the Super Bowl, gutted it out, made a bit of an impact in the Super Bowl, and walked off with the parade, I would retire the second my feet left the Art Museum steps. That would be the world's easiest decision for me in my mind right now. And for Brandon Graham, he says, well, I had to have conversations with myself, the competitor that I am. I don't know that we truly value or truly understand how difficult it is for these guys to walk away. Like, I still don't think we do, even after seeing Kelsey talk about it, Cox talk about it, now Brandon Graham talk about it. And when guys like Jason Peters hang on for too long from the fans' perspective, I think it's going to be important in the future to think back to that Brandon Graham clip we just played and say, man, how tough it is for guys to walk away, even when they're in the perfect scenario. Could you imagine, like, if you're chasing a ring like Jason Kelsey was, or like Jason Peters, if you wanted to try and, I don't know, continue to make that money and play at a competitive level? I think we underestimate how hard it is for great players to walk away.
I think it's as you can't get in someone else's head either.
No.
About because it may be that for Jason Peters that money drives him more than it drives someone else.
Exactly.
Like, for him to be able to go, oh, Jason, you show up to play for Seattle, we're going to pay you $5 million.
And he has that right. Like, listen,
he does. It's his right. It's his decision.
Yeah, when you reach that pinnacle of greatness while you're still playing in the NFL, you get carte blanche to kind of decide how the rest of your career is going to play out.
Sure.
There are very few guys that get to do that in the NFL. We've been so lucky to know so many of them as Philadelphia Eagles, and that's a credit to the organization. But I just want people who see players hang on too long to think about Brandon Graham being in the perfect, like, no-brainer situation to retire, and how tough it still was for him to make that decision. And then you put that on someone who didn't walk out with a parade and being beloved by literally everybody in the fan base, and you can see why some people hang on as long as they do to professional athlete careers. All right, we got Adam Shefter coming your way next for some great insight from the premier NFL insider from ESPN. What does he have on Trayvon Walker and the other signings that the Philadelphia Eagles have made recently? We will discuss that with him coming up next. Some great stuff still to come here on Kincade Salciunas, 97.5 The Fanatic.
Fanatic Sports Update.
Number 55 calls it a career. I'm Brendan Gunn with your Fanatic Sports Update. After 15 seasons and helping bring the city of Philadelphia 2 Super Bowl titles, Eagles legend Brandon Graham called it a career yesterday. The 2010 first-round pick is always going to be remembered for his strip sack in Super Bowl 52 to help secure the Birds their first Super Bowl championship, but he did so much more on top of that. He played the most games in an Eagles uniform in franchise history, and he retires with the third most sacks in team history behind Trent Cole and Reggie White. At his press conference yesterday, he had one last message to the city of Philadelphia.
While my time on the field is coming to an end, my love for this team and city will never fade. Philadelphia and everybody, from the bottom of my heart, I just want to thank y'all. EAGLES, Eagles. Fly, Eagles, fly. My last one. BG out, baby.
The Sixers continue their road trip tonight with their third of 6 straight away from the Wells Fargo Center. Tonight's in Oklahoma City. They're taking on the Thunder. Tip-off is at 8 in that one. You can listen to that game live right here on The Fanatic. And the Flyers remain idle for a second straight night tonight, but they're back in action tomorrow against the Washington Capitals. And then 1 week from tomorrow, Phillies baseball in Washington as well. This update was brought to you by Rapid Radios. Rapid Radios are instant push-to-talk walkie-talkies offering national LTE coverage. For a limited time, go to rapidradios.com now for 60% off and free UPS shipping. Add code radio and get an extra 5% off at checkout. I'm Brendan Gunn on the home of the 76ers and the Flyers, 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com.
Philadelphia Union Soccer.
Shefter joining us coming up momentarily. I do want to remind you, you're listening to 97.5 The Fanatic, WPN HD1 Burlington, Philadelphia, a Beasley Media Group station, broadcasting live from the Comcast Business Studio, powering possibilities.
What do you got there in front of you?
I got myself a little milkshake here. It's not a little milkshake.
No, that's a big milkshake.
Big milkshake from our friends over at Nifty 50s. Johnny, tell people about them?
Nifty 50s, bringing back the spirit of the 50s. Everybody knows it. Delicious burgers, fresh cut fries, handcrafted sodas, hand-dipped milkshakes. They're awesome. Keep St. Patty's Day alive all month long with Nifty 50 Shake of the Month, the Irish potato.
It looks good.
A 10-time Best of Philly winner. Nifty 50s, multiple locations, all over the place. McDade Boulevard, for us Delco people back in the day. South Philly, Abington, Williamstown, and more. Visit nifty50s.com. They got great locations. And, by the way, they'll be watching the hoops all week long. So you can order online. You can get no-fee delivery through the Nifty 50s app. So it's available on the App Store and Google Play. Taste the memories at Nifty 50s.
It's a beautiful thing. This
Great
milkshake
stuff.
couldn't be thicker, so it's a perfect time to go to the Comcast Business Hotline to talk to Adam Shefter to
Get in
let
the thick of it, right?
thaw out a little bit. And we have we're in the thick of a lot of conversation with the Philadelphia Eagles. So let's go to the Comcast Business Hotline. He's brought to you by Landis Block. Create your very own jaw-dropping backyard paradise online at landisbc.com. Adam Shefter joins us. And Adam, a big point of news yesterday for the Philadelphia Eagles. Brandon Graham announces his retirement after 15 years with the Philadelphia Eagles. What was your initial reaction to that news?
Well, I think it's a situation where the guy's been tremendous, and he's been somebody that you look to on and off the field as a leader, and it's a situation where basically, the guy came in and there were questions about whether he was going to make it initially as a first-round draft pick. And not only did he make it, but became the longest tenured Eagle in franchise history, which is quite a feat when you look at it. Guy was incredible, and bravo on a great career, carried himself with class and dignity. Just an impressive guy. And
a huge loss, by the way, a Michigan guy. So you got a little Shefter love there, right?
Of course. Well, that gets factored into the answer.
You guys are family there. The loss to the Eagles, it's amazing. And Jimmy Kempsky, one of our fine writers here in town, brought up the point today. Right now, the Eagles currently, Adam, have 4 players on the roster over the age of 30 that will play this season. That seems incredible to me. Is that as odd as it sounds?
4 over 30.
Yes.
So
they have 4 guys on the roster. Dallas Goedert's one of them, by the way. You got your long snapper. You got Lane Johnson. You have your kicker, Jake Elliott. And Dallas Goedert, who may be moved on. So you have 4 guys. I've been doing the research. It looks like they're going to be the youngest defending Super Bowl champ of this century.
Yep. Well, and again, we've talked about the added draft picks that they have in other years, right?
Sure.
That means that they're going to continue to get younger and younger and younger. So that trend that you just pointed out is going to continue and continue to go that way. That's just the way it is. That's the way they've set it up.
I'm also fascinated as to, with all those draft picks, what Howie may be wanting to do with them. Right. And I had a source in Georgia football speak to me last week and say that they said, well, from what I'm hearing, you're going to get another dog this week and then another one before camp. I didn't know if they were talking about the draft or whether they were talking about a trade. With all these draft picks, could the Birds be in on Trayvon Walker, who reportedly the Jaguars are shopping? You understand it more than anybody. Is he really on the market, and do you think Howie would take a swing like that?
Well, again, he's got the draft capital to do these things now. He can do what he wants. The money, the cap space, that's a different issue. But he's going to have the ability to be very flexible here, very flexible. So let's see how that works out moving forward here. It's going to be interesting.
Now, Adam, the Eagles have made some moves at edge rusher already, so we're looking at the acquisitions of Josh Uche and also Azeez Ojulari. What do they do in replacing Josh Sweat for this Eagles team?
Well, I think that's it already. You add a player like Azeez Ojulari. You have the draft picks. You have the young guy they had last year, whose name I can't even pronounce, right? Who came on and played.
Jalix Hunt?
Him?
I mean, you got tons. Yes.
I mean, they've got the guys they need to get this done, in my mind. I don't think it's much of an issue. And they're always looking for more pass rush help. So what we see today on March 19th is not going to be what it looks like on August 19th or September 19th.
When you talk about leadership in the NFL, though, and in a locker room, it's amazing. They go and they win a Super Bowl when they lose Jason Kelce and Fletcher Cox in one off season, two of their biggest leaders all time in this franchise. Do we talk too much about what leadership is, and can young guys lead? Because this roster is going to be real young next year.
I think leadership is overrated to me to a certain extent. I think when teams win, all of a sudden everybody is a leader. And when teams lose, by the way, not last year, but the year before when they were on that team game, where was all that leadership then that you're talking about?
Yeah, that's what I kept wondering about is when you hear about veteran leadership in the locker room, that locker room came unglued.
Yeah, okay, so there you go. That's what I'm saying. When you're winning, it's easy to have leaders. When you're losing, where are the leaders? I think leadership, the discussion of it, is one of the more overrated elements in sports. Either a team's playing well, and thus it'll have leadership, or it's not, and it won't. Right? This Eagles team, when it was losing, didn't have leadership. But yet, there were a lot of the same guys, were there not?
Yeah, there definitely were. Now, Adam, we had a conversation earlier in the show about leadership down in Washington. Jaden Daniels being the face of that team now, heading into his second season. Does he have a sophomore slump on the way, in your opinion, or will we continue to see high-level play out of him?
With who?
With Jaden Daniels for Washington.
And listen, now if I had answered this question last year about C.J. Stroud, I would have probably answered it the same way. Like, what we saw his rookie year did not lead you to believe that he's going to be slumping in his sophomore year, and yet C.J. Stroud's offensive line struggled, the team struggled, he didn't play great. He still looks like he's going to be an excellent quarterback in this league, but I think we have to ramp down some of the praise for him after last year and now wait and see. And I think I'd answer with Jaden Daniels. The guy looked like he was incredible, an elite player. He's got elite character. He's already a leader kind of guy at that age, and the guys gravitate towards him. And I don't think the team was overly great at all, and yet he helped elevate them and get them to the spot that they reached in the playoffs, the NFC Championship game. So I don't know why he wouldn't continue to improve. That's what I would expect, but I would have answered that on C.J. Stroud, too, at this time last year, and it would not have been right.
We obviously have our eyes on Washington, and you had your eyes on Jaden Daniels last offseason, so I think this is a good question for you. Mm-hmm. The idea to me is that I was shocked with seeing Washington in an NFC title game, and then their offseason plan, honestly, it baffles me, Adam. They took they have all that money, and they have a young quarterback, and to me, they went and got old and bought some descending assets, some assets that are declining, more than trying to sort of follow the Eagles' business model of building something that's going to be sustainable for maybe 4, 5, 6 bites at the apple.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they've got Jaden Daniels under a rookie contract here, right?
Sure.
And so they're going to have flexibility for the next 3 years. They can take gambles on guys like Deebo Samuel.
Tunsil.
What?
And Laramie Tunsil.
And Laramie Tunsil. They could do these things. They fill the window. They have 2-3 more years to do these things. So that's the advantage of getting a rookie quarterback on the contract.
Now, Adam, looking at a trend with the Philadelphia Eagles defense, we've seen them add multiple players from the Georgia Bulldogs, and that has become a thing in Philly for years now, it feels like. They had another one in Azeez Ojulari. We brought up the potential of Trayvon Walker being shopped, and could the Eagles be in on him? Is there a point where you say it's almost too much of the same team on the Eagles, or if you find good players, does that not matter?
I don't think it's too much. Again, it's worked for them. So why would you not continue to do that? I mean, that's the deal. They found success there. They won a Super Bowl there. If it's working, you're going to do it. If it's not, then you go a different direction. But they've had great success at that school. They've hit the right guys.
Have you ever seen a team do this, though, where they go so strongly into one college organization?
Well, Baltimore with Miami and Ed Reed and Ray Lewis is pretty good, and I'm sure there were more.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there are other examples.
Is when you look at the Eagles offseason and you're talking to people around the NFL about this upcoming draft, how much are teams excited about what's the ability they're going to have to stockpile talent, especially in the first 3 rounds, Adam? Are you hearing NFL executives really excited about this cast of characters that are available to be drafted?
Well, the one thing that I've heard from teams are a few things. I've heard that the player from 10 is very similar to the player available at 35, and that the strength of this draft is in the middle rounds. So where the Eagles are, that would seem to play into the strength of the draft then, right? They're going to get a good player, and then they got extra picks in the middle rounds.
And people are going to maybe want some of their middle round picks that they have so many of in trades to go grab talent, correct?
And this is an organization that loves to wheel and deal those picks and manipulate the draft and move all around the board and kind of move out of a slot, move up to go get the guy they like, or move back to get extra picks because they think there's a certain area that they want to hit later on. I mean, that's what they've done, and that's what I would expect that they're going to continue to do here, that they're going to be very busy doing all this stuff here.
All right, Adam. Well, we appreciate the time as always. As you know, with the Brandon Graham retirement, the position for most beloved graduate of Michigan here in Philadelphia is open. We'll put your name in for that position, and we'll be happy to talk to you next week.
I'm trying to think. Is there anybody else right now that could compete for the title? I'm just thinking. Is there any other Michigan athlete there right now? I don't think so.
You got a strong case.
I think that's it. I mean, it's the way it works. So.
Even if there was, we'd put your name in over theirs anyway. Adam, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. We'll talk to you next week.
You got it.
There you go, Adam Shefter joining us on the Comcast Business Hotline.
And he's always brought to us by Landis Block. Create your very own jaw-dropping backyard paradise online at landisbc.com.
Happy birthday to Jared Nice, too, from Landis Block. And
happy birthday, Jared.
Look forward to swinging the club soon.
That'll be fun.
I would, I'm going to tell you right now, I think I can speak Shefter. He was completely distracted. He was incredibly cagey on the Trayvon Walker answer.
He was.
I now am more enthused than ever, that something may be cooking.
Well, there's something else outside of that was happening during Schefter's interview, because I went on social media as soon as he was a little bit short on that Trayvon Walker thing, and there were some tweets coming out about a certain quarterback in the NFL. So we will react to Shefter coming up next.
Okay.
We also have today's headlines with Brendan Gunn on the other side, and we are going to replay the best 5 minutes of Adam Shefter later in the show. So plenty to react to from our favorite NFL insider, Adam Shefter. Coming up next as we continue Kincade Salciunas here on 97.5 The Fanatic. freshman 15. They might have to start a new thing called the Nifty 50 with how much I'm going to eat of this stuff today. Shout out to Nifty 50s for bringing us some wonderful, wonderful food.
They got it great for you, Nifty 50s. Absolutely awesome, and we appreciate them being here today. Remember, visit nifty50s.com. Remember, you too, during the tournament, you can order online or get free, no-fee delivery through the Nifty 50s app. It's available on the App Store and Google Play. Taste the memories at Nifty 50s.
I might do that. There's one right down from me. Like if I go all the way down Girard to Aramingo, there's one right down there. And I might get delivery for either Thursday or Friday.
There you go. When you're watching
the game.
Imagine one of those milkshakes.
It's a beautiful thing.
Good for you. And me not competing for the food opens a little bit more for you.
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to eat all of that stuff out there. So we just talked to Adam Shefter. And now, just to give people the full scope of what's happening, while he was on the air with us, there were some tweets coming out from Tom Pelissaro and Ian Rappaport about Aaron Rodgers because the Vikings have apparently made it clear in league circles that they're not looking to move on from J.J. McCarthy at all. They seem to be out on Aaron Rodgers. So that's some news that should be pushing towards either Pittsburgh or the New York Giants being Aaron Rodgers' destination, and that could really speed up that process. So if there was something that he was dismissive of, like the Trayvon Walker conversation, it could have been the fact that he was getting that news on Rodgers.
Could have been.
But he was expressive in some answers, and the Trayvon Walker thing he was quiet on. So what's your impression of that?
I think he was cagey. I think there was something he could have said and didn't want to say.
Interesting.
I really do think that. I think we're sniffing on the right track.
Okay.
I really do. That we're going to find out that it's over.
What he did say, because it's funny, if you haven't heard our previous interviews with Adam Schefter, whenever we brought up the Myles Garrett conversation, he almost chastised us. He was like, why in the world do you think Myles Garrett's coming to the Eagles? It's not a realistic thing. Very similar to how you talked about it, John, you and Shefty.
Sure.
2 peas in a pod. This was not a, what in the world are you talking about, John, when you asked that question. This was a, okay, they have a lot of versatility with the draft picks and everything. This is sounding like a possibility.
Sure.
So it's something to certainly keep an eye on.
Yeah, it's something that I think we should keep an eye on.
Absolutely.
And the only thing, and as you brought it up, that Sheffield has answered, the idea of whether they will be able to do it all with, because you're going to want to extend Trayvon Walker.
Right.
So then you get the 2-year test drive. And I don't think they're just going to activate his 5th year if they were able to make a move like this.
No, you'd have to sign him long term.
But this is it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Speaking of pretty good, another segment on this show that's pretty good is today's headlines with Brendan Gunn.
Today's headlines with the one and only Brendan Gunn.
The one and only.
Brought to us by
the one and only Lundy Law. For over 70 years, Lundy Law has been fighting for injured people. If you need them, remember the name, Lundy Law. Your injury lawyers, visit lundylaw.com. That's lundylaw.com.
What do we have?
So, yesterday something came to an end, as it's been the main topic of today's show. And anytime something comes to an end in this world, Nick Castellanos does this.
23 homers last year for Castellanos, 86 ribbies. And drives this one to left field. And that is a no-doubter. Absolutely hammered as Castellanos hits his second home run of the spring for the Phillies.
Okay, this is a stretch.
I mean, I don't know.
This is a complete stretch.
I don't know that it is. He's only
this
got
is a complete
2
stretch.
in the spring, and one of them comes on the day of the Brandon Graham retirement announcement, right after Brandon Graham announces it.
This is becoming a stretch.
I don't think it is.
Every time something comes to an end or dies, it happens.
Brandon Graham's career, R.I.P., Nick Castellanos home run.
That's unbelievable.
It had to happen.
Listen.
I mean, it is a little bit of a stretch, but at the same time,
it's a total stretch.
It's a little bit of a stretch, but at the same
you
time,
go down the list. There's so many unfortunate events that Nick Castellanos homers that day.
How many days also does nothing happen and Nick Castellanos doesn't homer? Like
that's the bigger thing.
No, but he doesn't homer on those days. When he hits a home run, it always seems to link up with something. Even if you're stretching, that doesn't happen for any other Major League Baseball player. That's a good pickup by you, B. Gunn.
Yeah, there's a lot of correlation there. But another thing that happened in the news yesterday, Marcus Morris, former Sixer, appeared on Kevin O'Connor's Yahoo Sports podcast. And last week, if you remember, Daryl Morey made the comments about incorporating artificial intelligence in his decision-making process. Well, Marcus Morris let loose on Daryl Morey. This is his thoughts on that.
Man, so I'm going to just say this, and this will be the first time I ever said this. I don't trust Daryl Morey. I just don't trust him. I think he's thinking too far ahead of the way basketball needs to be played. He's trying to do a whole new team. He's trying to bring guys in. He's flipping them in and out, in and out, in and out. Does he even understand the dynamic of being in Philadelphia? What guys you need to play in Philadelphia? Like, understand how the team needs to gel first before you start talking about AI.
I hated the AI stuff.
Yeah, I know a lot of people did.
As long as it's a part of the conversation and not the full. And I'm sure with Daryl Morey, it's not the full. But I want to know too how much did the AI votes count?
Right, and it depends. He said,
how much input do they have?
He said it depends on the system and everything like that. But ultimately, Marcus Morris is speaking for the Philadelphian there. He's speaking more as it sounded like a Philly guy than a true basketball player in that sense. We're going to have this conversation later on in the show in the 9 o'clock hour about your faith level in Daryl Morey. But this is the second time we've heard a major professional athlete say, hey, I don't really trust this guy. Now, I don't know. I'm not taking my opinion
James
from
Harden
them.
flat out said it.
Said
James
he's a
Harden
liar.
said it. Chris Paul said it.
And he...
Oh, yeah, so I guess third time.
And the reputation's there.
The reputation is. Now, we're entitled to make our own determination, which we will later on in the show about how much we trust the guy. But interesting stuff there from Marcus Morris. Great job, Brendan Gunn, there on today's headlines. Always a fun segment. Thank you to Lundy Law for being the sponsor for that. Coming up next, Johnny, you've got a question about the relationship between teams in our town.
Yes.
Do the Phillies and other teams fail to get the Eagles scrutiny? We will discuss that coming up next. I'll let you lay out that question for the people and for myself and B. Gunn. Plenty more to come here on Kincade Salciunas, 97.5 The Fanatic. Oh, and by the way, we've got Andrew Salciunas joining us at 8:30. You're not going to want to miss that. His name is kind of on the show. Kincade Salciunas back after this here on The Fanatic.
Fanatic Sports Update.
Number 55 hangs up the cleats. I'm Brendan Gunn with your Fanatic Sports Update. After 15 seasons and helping bring this Eagles 2 Super Bowl titles to the city of Philadelphia, Brandon Graham called it a career yesterday. The 2010 first-round pick will always be remembered for his strip sack in Super Bowl 52 that helped secure the Birds their first Super Bowl championship. But he did so much more on top of that. He played the most games in an Eagles uniform in franchise history, and he retires with the third most sacks in team history behind Trent Cole and Reggie White. At his press conference yesterday, he had one last message to the city of Philadelphia.
While my time on the field is coming to an end, my love for this team and city will never fade. Philadelphia and everybody, from the bottom of my heart, I just want to thank y'all. EAGLES, Eagles. Fly, Eagles, fly. My last one. BG out, baby.
The Sixers continue their road trip tonight with their third of 6 straight away from the Wells Fargo Center. Tonight's in Oklahoma City, and they're taking on the Thunder. Tip-off is at 8. You can catch that game live right here on the Fanatic tonight. And the Flyers, they remain idle for the second straight night, but they're back in action tomorrow against the Washington Capitals in Washington. And then 1 week from tomorrow, the Phillies start their season in Washington as well against the Washington Nationals. This update was brought to you by Moyer Indoor and Outdoor Services. Follow Andrew Salciunas' lead and get a jump on a green lush lawn this spring right now. Go to eMoyer.com for free estimates. I'm Brendan Gunn on the home of the 76ers and the Flyers, 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com.
Opening day is March 27th, and 97.5 The Fanatic and Philly Sports Trips want to send you and a guest.
Head to 97.5.
day here on Kincade and Salciunas. Andrew Salciunas is going to join us coming up in just a couple minutes, and he's down there with Philly Sports Trips in Clearwater. I do want to remind you, we've got your shot to win your way onto their opening day road trip in D.C.
8 days from now.
Yeah, it's coming up. Trip includes top-notch tailgate, but bus transportation and tickets in the 100 level with hundreds of fellow Philly fans for the March 27th game in D.C. You can enter for a chance to win on the contest page at 975thefanatic.com. From Philly Sports Trips, book your trip today at phillysportstrips.com.
Have you ever had a ticket, a secondary market ticket service? The ticket you bought, they found out that they couldn't deliver it to you?
I don't know.
We had tickets for this opening series down in Washington. We're going on next Saturday. And they said, we can't deliver you the section that you bought. So we automatically, by our policy, have to upgrade you to a better section.
You know what? This happened to me once at a Sixers game, I think, where I got the tickets. I went to go sit in my seat, and there was someone sitting in my seat.
Oh, well, this is one.
Hey, buddy.
This is in advance.
Yeah.
They can't deliver me the seat that I bought, and they upgraded us. So last night, Christina's checking on the web. We're in the Nationals Club, right behind home plate. All the food and drink.
Nice.
The open bar. Everything. I did not buy that. You know me. I'll buy a good seat.
Right.
I'm not going to spend the money like that. But we're in the best seats in the house. I'm like, okay, good. I'll take this. I'll do business with you again.
No, that'll be fun.
I can't wait.
So
Next Saturday, can't wait.
The only better seat in the house would be at the Philly Sports Trips bus trip.
Well, that's always going to be awesome, too. That's opening day.
Yes.
See, I'm going Saturday.
Oh, that's right. So, you get a chance to win that. You go to our website. So we got Andrew Salciunas joining us coming up in just about a minute here. And Johnny, I do want to, a little bit later on, get into this conversation about the relationship between the teams in our town, but you think there's this interesting scrutiny.
I do.
That the other teams fail to get about the Eagles.
Yeah, I have a feeling that if you're being honest, I look at a guy like Bryce Harper. Bryce Harper's an amazing player, one of the most talented players ever to put on a Phillies uniform. I don't think Bryce Harper gets the scrutiny, not even close to what Jalen Hurts gets.
Okay.
I mean, when I look at what Jalen Hurts gets in this town, I don't think Bryce Harper gets a tenth of it.
I don't
of the scrutiny, the side eye, the criticism.
Huh. Well,
I don't even think it's close, and I'm hoping that we're going to see a change in that. Now that we have Super Bowl champion, because Jalen Hurts did something leading his team that Bryce Harper is yet to do. And so I'm anxious to see if that percent. I don't want to hear the slander on Jalen Hurts that I've heard before.
I got you.
From a lot of our locals.
I understand why you're asking the question. I don't necessarily agree with you on it. Maybe we'll ask it to Andrew Salciunas here, who joins us now on the Comcast Business Hotline live from Clearwater. First and foremost, Salch, how's the strep throat treating you?
Oh, it's just wonderful. There's a golf ball in my throat. But other than that, I still feel fine. I already took the medicine. As I hang out, not in Clearwater, Harpersville. Because it's Bryce Harper all over the place around here. He's beloved by everybody. So I got in on the conversation late there, and I get what you're saying, John. I mean, I do think at times he gets his criticism. But it's really not that bad. Really not that bad compared to other athletes in this city.
Well, how about this? Because if you're looking at Harper, what I would say to you both is that Bryce Harper in the 3 games against Houston in the World Series, when they had a chance to win the World Series and they fell apart. Bryce Harper in the 2 games against the Arizona Diamondbacks when they had a chance to win. In the biggest moments where they needed him to rise, and they wouldn't even have been in those games without him. Jalen Hurts has risen to the occasion and still gets a lot of slander. I don't think that Harper should get slander, but I think that the Eagles are held to a completely different standard.
Well, Eagles obviously are held to a completely different standard. It's also the quarterback. Right, like Bryce Harper has 4 opportunities to make something happen. Now, he did have opportunities in the Diamondback series, right? Those 2 fly balls that just didn't get out. I mean, you're not always asking for a home run, but, he didn't get the job done, even though we saw the magical moments in previous series. So he has had Harper moments, right? It's not like it's been a guy's getting paid a lot of money, and every time the big
and
moments
he's a bum.
come,
yeah,
exactly. Like, he has been spectacular in a lot of big moments. Bedlam at the bank. I still cry thinking about it. You know what I mean? Like, that was one of my favorite days of my life to have been at that stadium for it. But you're right. I mean, it does happen, and at some point, maybe people start to turn. I mean, here's the deal: he has been worth every penny, despite the ring.
No
He's won an
question.
MVP. You know, he's been an all-star. He's had the iconic moments that will play, not just in Philadelphia highlights forever. Bedlam at the Bank is a national highlight. Like, that's going to play for the rest of baseball eternity. So he has had those moments where sometimes I think people go, all right, he's at least had his moment. I can't crush him too much. But at some point, especially as he gets older and the contract is still there, maybe people start going, uh-oh, when is this going to actually work out for the team?
It's a fair point, but I hear you saying worth every penny. Having those magic moments the Philadelphia fan base will remember forever. Beloved in this city. I think about another guy. I think about the guy who called it quits on a career yesterday. What's your reaction to Brandon Graham retiring?
Expected, right? I think, especially once the 85 Eagles reporters put out the tweet that he was going to be speaking. But his story is amazing. I mean, from draft day all the way through the end of his career, the fact that he plays in the Super Bowl, re-tearing his triceps, that Derek Gunn broke on our show when Johnny was out, because all the great stuff happens when
That's what
Johnny's
happens.
out.
You guys keep all that great content.
We've had a
for
great
when I'm
show
away.
without you this week, too.
Yeah, we've had some fun this week, too.
Of course. It's just when John and I are together, it's when the show's bad. But no, he had an iconic career. He's a forever Eagle. And I know it got a little dicey this year, you know, with the comments that he made. But, man, 10 years from now, when I'm thinking about Brandon Graham, I'm not thinking about him talking about Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown's relationship on a radio show, right? Like, Brandon Graham will forever be Mr. Eagle, most games played in Eagles franchise history. And speaking of iconic moments, we talk about Harper, Bedlam at the Bank, the Super Bowl 52. That is an all-time iconic moment. John, you and I did a post-show headline on YouTube a couple of weeks ago about, you know, what's the big moment in each team's history. And the Brandon Graham strip sack should probably be number one, or at least in the top three for a lot of people, because that was the moment where you go, oh, my God, they're going to win the Super Bowl, even though it still got close at the end because it's Brady, but whatever. I mean, that was the moment where you realized this could actually happen.
Like, Philly Special was great, but that game they were trailing in the fourth quarter after Philly Special. Philly Special was amazing. It's iconic. It's a memorable moment. But Brandon Graham sort of sealed the deal. And that came out. And then Jake Elliott, too, come along with a clutch field goal after that.
By the way, speaking of iconic moments, yesterday I did the Q&A with Larry Boa and Jason Wirth.
Did you not give them strep throat, I hope?
I stayed away from them, trust me. I was me and Vince from Philly Sports Trips.
All right, good. Love Vince.
It was kind of like COVID days all over again, 6 feet away. I asked Jason about the delay.
Okay.
And from Game 5. He got sick in Game 5 because of the weather.
Really?
So I asked him, I was like, what was that Game 5 experience like for you? He goes, honestly, dude, like, a lot of people went to the cages and did all kinds of stuff. I was in bed for 48 hours. He got sick from all the rain and from the cold and the horrible weather. He said he was just popping Sudafed trying to get over it.
Oh, my
And then he said the day of the resumption of the game, he thought there was an earthquake as he was about to walk out of the tunnel to get to the field. Because normally when you're warming up 3 hours before the game starts, right? And it's the first inning.
Sure.
And, you know, the Fanatic's driving around on his you know, four-wheeler. But in this case, it was the middle of the game. It was the sixth inning. And he said he literally thought there was an earthquake hitting Philadelphia when he was walking out of the tunnel. So one of the cooler stories, but turns out he got sick. I wonder how many other guys had some sort of issue like that. I never thought about that.
Okay, again, tell people, because Philly Sports Trips is so great, tell people the experience at spring training. Your wife's getting it for the first time and enjoying
it's
it.
amazing.
How awesome is it?
It's amazing. I mean, a spring training alone, like if you went down your own, you're going to have a good time. But if you go through Philly Sports Trips, you have the events like the Jason Wirth and Larry Boa Q&A. Today, we're doing a Q&A with Charlie Manuel for about an hour. That's
Do
where I'm
not
going
get
after
him
I hang
sick.
up with you guys.
Yeah, remember, you got
I
questions
will
you got
not
to
get-
ask him.
No, I'm on 3 amoxicillins already. I'm good.
Wow, okay.
But yes, I'm going to ask the lineup question.
Good. I
will
can't
tell
wait.
I will tell you, Jason Wirth would disagree with you, John.
Okay.
Smart
He
man,
made
Jason.
that point very clear yesterday that it's not just who's happy. They all have all the data in the world. They spend hours coming up with lineups. So Jason Wirth would disagree with you, but we'll see what Charlie has to say, the World Series manager.
Yeah, and ask Charlie, too, if you would, during the Q&A, about holding players accountable publicly and not just being, all my players are great and I love them and I'm always going to have their back. I'd love to hear a little bit
Larry,
about
actually, Larry talked about
He
that
did?
yesterday.
Good.
He said in today's day and age, there's no more blow-ups in the locker room. You have to pull the guy aside. And he said social media is a big part of that.
Yeah?
Because the player then gets embarrassed that it's all over all over X and Instagram and everything. So a lot of it has to do with social media as to why you're doing a lot of things behind closed door and saying all the right things behind a microphone.
It's an interesting thing, and it's an interesting trip when you go with Philly Sports Trips in the best possible way. So you enjoy the rest of your time. We will talk to you tomorrow.
We'll see you
you're
tomorrow,
feeling better, buddy. Andrew
you guys.
Salciunas, ladies and gentlemen.
If he gets Charlie sick, I swear to you,
Yeah, you won't. He's going to be as careful as possible.
going to take care of it.
Yeah, so I'm very interested to hear what he's
By the
got
way, the
to
whole
say.
6 feet thing, we know from Dr. Fauci's testimony. It was just made up. So just be careful, Andrew. Stay away from Charlie.
Yeah, just
enjoy him.
Don't get Charlie Manuel sick.
Exactly.
Coming up next, we are going to get into that question that you had, John, about the a little bit deeper, the kind of idea of scrutiny between the teams, that if one gets more than the others. We're also going to open up a topic about where Brandon Graham is on the list of all-time Eagles for you. So we will discuss plenty more about Brandon Graham's retirement as we continue today's show. I'm Connor Thomas in for Andrew Salciunas, who you just heard. John Kincade to my left, Brandon Gunn on the board. More Kincade and Salciunas comes your way next here on 97.5 The Fanatic.
The Philadelphia 76ers.
Sixers win.
going to be able to play you the best 5 minutes of our earlier interview with Adam Shefter, premier NFL insider for ESPN. So we got that if you missed our interview.
Put on your detective hats.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen carefully.
He may have been distracted by the Aaron Rodgers story.
But he gave us some lengthier answers on some things and shorter on the others. Take from that what you will. Now, Adam Shefter is a guy that's told us multiple times he deals in facts and reporting, and he doesn't like conjecture as much as radio hosts do, who get the chance to conjecture all day about everything.
We bathe in conjecture.
So it's
a cologne.
It's a different profession that he operates in, but there are some nuggets that you can gain if you listen to it the right way. So we'll play that for you coming up at 9:10. I do also want to tell you about the Fanatic Deal of the Week. Arnold's Family Fun Center. The place is awesome. You can check out the Fanatic Deal of the Week on 975thefanatic.com. You get two $50 point cards for the price of one. So you're basically getting 50 free bucks. It's Arnold's Family Fun Center in Oaks, PA. You can enjoy go-karts, mini golf, bowling, and more action-packed excitement for all ages at Arnold's. Get this exclusive offer while supplies last at 975thefanatic.com/deals.
That's a great spot.
It is.
Great spot.
And the weather's getting nice now. So
yes.
This is the time where you want to start getting out and doing stuff outside with the family, with the kids, with some buddies. Like Arnold's Family Fun Center is forever.
I swear the fresh air just changes everything.
It does. I've been getting outside like every day. Maybe it's just a walk or a run.
Should do something. You got to get fresh air. It does changes everything.
Absolutely. And baseball season right around the corner is
that changes my mood too. The fact that we're going to have the background music of baseball.
Yeah.
In a week. There's always something on. There's always something to talk about. It'll be a lot of fun.
Tournament, too. I mean, we got the tournament going on tomorrow. We talked a little with Amy Fadul about the NCAA tournament yesterday. But you brought up this interesting topic about the scrutiny between teams in this town. And if you want to lay that out again.
Yeah, again, now Andrew sort of agreed with me, but to the point that I wonder why the Eagles are our most beloved team. That's what everybody talks about, right?
Yeah.
They're the most loved team in this town, and I don't think it's even close. But for some reason, we scrutinize and attack and criticize and drag down Eagles players more than we do players on like the Phillies, players on the Sixers. I mean, I get tired of the constant defense of everything Joel Embiid and everything. I get tired. I get bored with it.
Johnny, you get that because of the people you sit in this room with.
Well, no, that is.
This city is not defending Joel Embiid.
See, I think that, this city is the majority, again, 50.1, have gone overboard to protect him over the years, to protect from the failure of it. I don't understand why. You look at the numbers in the biggest game. So we're talking about the Phillies are up 2-1 in the World Series. You have a chance to win a World Series. You got 2 games coming at home right after it. And you sort of whimper. You get no hit at home, for God's sakes. And then you whimper off. And then the next year, you're coming home, Game 6 and Game 7 at home. You only got to win 1 to go to the World Series against the Diamondbacks. And you literally gag and wet the bed again. You look at the number, the Philly Stars, I still don't think have taken a lot of heat for that.
Does it come back to the fact that they chose to be here? Like a lot of the guys that could get criticized on the Eagles, they were drafted here. Sixers drafted here. Phillies, they chose to be here as free agency.
So because they chose us, we feel this odd affection for them, you mean?
It comes to my mind a little bit. I mean, at least with Bryce Harper, because he does the pandering stuff like that.
Panders. He panders like he has a PhD.
But I think there's something to be said when they pick to come here. It's kind of guys don't want to rip them because they don't want to necessarily scare anybody else away from that.
Yeah.
Go on.
I totally agree with what Brendan's saying there. And now I don't think it's the biggest determination, but you were also bringing up the Bryce Harper thing earlier, right?
Right.
And how in the World Series he didn't have his biggest moments there.
6 and 7 when you're at home against the Diamondbacks.
Now, here's the thing.
I keep hearing about balls hit to the warning track. We don't do that stuff for Jalen Hurts.
Well,
we don't do that stuff for, you know what? In the Super Bowl a few years ago, Hassan Reddick got really close to sacking Patrick Mahomes. We don't make those excuses for Eagles.
They did it for Chase Utley back in the day, too, so it's been here for a while. It's not
but
just
Chase Utley is the champion.
Philly. Yep, that's a fact.
That's a little different.
Hold on.
Go on.
You can do that with Jalen Hurts. You can't really do that with Bryce Harper. If your quarterback stinks in the postseason, you lose. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He is the biggest determination of a football team's success, which is why he is so important. Let me tell you, last year, the Los Angeles Dodgers won the World Series, right?
Sure.
And Shohei Ohtani is the Los Angeles Dodgers' best player. Do you know what he did in the World Series? The dude batted like 104 or something. Let me get his exact numbers here. He batted 105. He had no home runs. He had 2 walks. He had 5 strikeouts. Meanwhile, Freddie Freeman was a monster. Now, Freddie's a great player, but Shohei Ohtani's the face of that team.
I mean, Freddie homered in every game, I think.
Yeah, Shohei stunk.
Yeah, well, the whole lineup's an MVP.
Yes.
But that's the thing. For the Philadelphia Phillies.
Here's the difference, Connor. You're not there. They're not there without Shohei.
Right.
And they won.
I got you. But
that's completely different.
No, it's not. The Phillies are not there without Bryce Harper.
No, I say that. But then they won.
I understand.
There's
so
a huge difference. We wouldn't even be talking about if they win.
My point is, it's not Bryce Harper. It's the team as a whole. Jalen Hurts touches the football 45, 50 times a game. Bryce Harper touches the baseball, 7, 8?
Right.
Now he plays first base, so maybe it's a little bit more defensively. Offensively, he gets 4 opportunities. Right? Like, it's not remotely the same thing. It's so much more of a team game. And I'm not saying football doesn't require a team. I'm saying the quarterback exists on this plane that is totally different than any other player on that field and any other position in sports.
Yeah, I know. It didn't matter if Mike Schmidt had big home runs along the way. When Mike Schmidt crapped out in some big opportunities, he got crushed in this town. Absolutely crushed.
Yeah, but because it happened in the 80s doesn't mean it's right.
No, I'm
Just
not saying
people did it doesn't mean it's the correct way to go about it.
No, but it still is logical that your biggest player you expect to perform at the biggest time.
And Bryce Harper largely has.
Many times has. But there's big examples, and we've had 3 years in a row where it hasn't happened in the biggest moments.
He was fine last year. He was fine last year.
I don't think that's true.
I don't think he was fine against the Mets. I don't really think fine.
He was one of your better hitters.
He was one of him and Casty. Right, we're probably the best.
Like someone else has to do it besides Bryce Harper. It's unfair to ask for more from him than what he's given you.
Okay,
and it's totally fair to ask more from a lot of
other
other players.
Other stars on these Phillies?
That's what I'm saying.
He had Bohm hitting behind him. They didn't want to pitch to him.
Exactly. Like this isn't a Bryce Harper problem. And if he doesn't
the idea is the scrutiny of the whole team.
I got
it's not just a Harper story.
I think the Phillies get their fair share too, and the Eagles get the most because, well, they're the Eagles, and the Eagles will always get the most.
Rob Thompson gets a freaking golden ticket. Pass.
I don't know what you're looking at.
No, in fact, the players don't get enough scrutiny, and Rob Thompson gets the majority of it.
People lose it on Rob Thompson. They've been trying to fire him for 2 years. I don't know. Yeah, I disagree with you on this.
Rob gets the love zone.
No, he does not. Coming up next, we are going to get into that conversation about where Brandon Graham is on your list of all-time Eagles. And because of this Brandon Graham conversation, something we've kind of flirted around with today but haven't touched on, do we judge players too early in this city? We'll discuss that coming up. We could probably do hours on that conversation. It's Kincade Salciunas here, 97.5 The Fanatic.
Fanatic Sports Update.
BG hangs up the cleats. I'm Brendan Gunn with your Fanatic Sports Update. After 15 seasons and helping bring 2 Super Bowl titles to the city of Philadelphia, Eagles legend Brandon Graham called it a career yesterday. The 2010 first-round pick is always going to be remembered for his strip sack in Super Bowl 52 that helped the Birds secure their first Super Bowl championship, but he did so much more on top of that. He played the most games in an Eagles uniform in franchise history, and he retires with the 3rd most sacks in team history behind Trent Cole and Reggie White. At his press conference yesterday, he had one last message to the city of Philadelphia.
While my time on the field is coming to an end, my love for this team and city will never fade. Philadelphia and everybody, from the bottom of my heart, I just want to thank y'all. EAGLES, Eagles. Fly, Eagles, fly. My last one. BG out, baby.
The Sixers continue their road trip tonight with their 3rd of 6 straight away from the Wells Fargo Center. Tonight's in Oklahoma City to take on the Thunder. Tip-off is at 8, and you can listen to that game live right here on The Fanatic. And the Flyers, they remain idle tonight for a second straight night in a row. But they're back in action tomorrow in Washington to take on the Capitals. And then 1 week from tomorrow, the Phillies start their season in Washington as well. They're on the road to start the opening series against the Nationals. This update was brought to you by Bradford White Water Heaters. When you need a new water heater, choose one that is built to be the best. Choose Bradford White. I'm Brendan Gunn on the home of the 76ers and the Flyers, 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com.
Philadelphia Sports. Touchdown!
for you the best 5 minutes of our interview with Adam Shefter coming up at 9:10. That video is already up on our YouTube channel, so go ahead and check out 97.5 The Fanatic on YouTube. Haley doing a great job getting that video up for us.
Get some tongues wagging a little bit, maybe. Maybe other people are going to go, I didn't hear it in his voice. I did.
Maybe. Listen, we talk to him.
Something was up.
We talk to him every week, so we may sometimes overlook stuff that sounds like he's missing something.
Sure.
Like, Schefter's weird, right? Not him as an individual.
No, he's weird. It's all right.
But trying to interpret what he means is weird because there are times where he won't talk about something specifically, and there are times where he just won't talk about something for another reason, and we get kind of caught up in the torture chamber of
trying
Adam
to figure
Schefter's
out
mind.
Yeah, where we are.
So, but it's a fun thing because he does give us things to talk about and think about every week. So you'll get a chance to hear that, and you can watch that right now. Now,
I'd wait till 10 to do it, but that's just me.
Oh, well, yeah.
I wouldn't do it now.
Absolutely. Watch the rest
I don't
of the
want you
show.
distracted.
Well, no, because then you got to watch the Mike Missanelli show, and then you got to flip over to NBC Sports.
Well,
Philly
look,
for the best show
Mike
ever.
and Bill won't mind if you show up 10 minutes late because you're
Here's what
checking
you
that
do.
out.
You set an alarm for 1 a.m. this morning, and you wake up, and you watch the Adam Schefter interview, and then you talk to us tomorrow about it. Sound good?
There you go.
All right, so I want to get into a couple of conversations. I want to lead with this one because this one is the more interesting point of conversation to me because we've talked a little bit, and Adam Schefter brought it up, I think. We had a texter bring it up about early moments in Brandon Graham's career. Remember, when Brandon Graham, who retired yesterday after 15 years, all with the Philadelphia Eagles, goes down as one of the Eagles' all-time greats, we will love him forever in this city. We'll remember his moments forever in this city. We wanted Earl Thomas. And we wanted Earl Thomas not just in the draft. We wanted him in year 1 and 2 and 3.
And for good reason.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like Earl Thomas was a scrub or anything. Like, he was a very, very good football player. And there was right to want that player on this team, especially early in Brandon Graham's career. But let's remember back, right? Because we've been talking a lot about who I've termed the Big Four today. And that is Fletcher Cox, Jason Kelce, Brandon Graham, and Lane Johnson. There are points in all of those guys' careers where we wanted them out of this city.
Correct.
Remember, Brandon Graham, we wanted Earl Thomas. Fletcher Cox, there were points in like the 5th, 6th type of point in his season when we talk about years where we were like, well, his production's kind of dropped off. Is he going to be this guy forever? Where is his ceiling truly at? Now, he was a member of the All-Decades team for the last decade of NFL football, so I'd say it worked out pretty well for Fletcher Cox. Jason Kelce, there were points where he says himself, he's like, I was terrible. I needed to work on stuff. I had to fight through that. There were people in the city that wanted me traded. There were rumors about me being traded. It was tough for me to go through. And also with Lane Johnson, when he was having all this stuff with PEDs, Lane Johnson can't lay off the juice, as Jason Kelce once famously yelled from the Art Museum steps. All of these all-time great Eagles, they're going to spend or have spent their entire careers here and will go down as some of the greatest names in this franchise's history. We wanted to move on from at some point. Now, that may have been warranted in the moment. I'm not saying we were wrong. But I am saying now, looking back on it, it has to make you wonder, do we judge people too soon in this city when it comes to our athletes?
Well, I question one thing about what you just said.
What's
that? The people who wanted to move on from Brandon Graham, we can admit now they were wrong.
Absolutely.
They were wrong. So we can be wrong, but we're not wrong in the moment to be disappointed with what we're getting.
Yeah, the conversation was not unwarranted. We were
no,
incorrect
it wasn't. It was
to want
not
that.
unwarranted.
That's what I'm
Correct.
saying. Like,
okay, that's right then.
So my point is, there will be times in great athletes' career. We're going to look back, I firmly believe, on Jalen Hurts' career and say, I can't believe we had the conversation we did about him following the 2023 season. Like, I can in the moment, but where he ends up as maybe a multiple-time Super Bowl winner in this city, 2 appearances already in the big game, 1 win, that we wanted this guy gone, that we questioned this guy?
Well, some people did. Yeah, I mean, I will feel good that I was always on the right side of history.
I mean, you were always more on the right side,
Like,
but you weren't always full Jalen Hurts.
No,
this guy's the guy.
No, but I mean, I was on the fence, but I never jumped into the yard of saying, get rid of him. I'm giving up on him.
I got
and
you.
a lot of people did.
Yeah,
and I
the
wondered,
Russell Wilson stuff.
Oh, God, I remember with our buddy Jamie. It drove me crazy. And Chunas wanted him, too.
Yeah.
Wanted Russell Wilson. And it just was making my head explode. I'm like, why do we want to go down the road of the washed up? Then let's not do that. Let's go, young guy, give him a shot. And right now, it's amazing. You could argue today that he's the greatest quarterback in Eagles history. I think Donovan McNabb still is. I'm very much like you. Huge Donovan fan.
Yeah.
Huge. But you could make the argument today that he is the best quarterback in franchise history.
Yeah.
And have a lot to put on your plate and go, yeah, he might be.
To your main point, though, I don't think we judge players too soon. It's never anything personal. Maybe we want our own Thomas over. Sometimes it's personal, but you have to make it personal first. We just root for the jersey before we root for the name on the back. That's the way it is. We want the best for you. We want you to be the best because we want the team to be the best. It's not you. It's just we want the Eagles to be better.
I just wonder if there's people sitting out there today and they think back on the way that we've looked at guys like Brandon Graham and Cox and Kelsey and Johnson during their career and say, wow, we were a little bit hasty to make the determination that we wanted to move on. Should we be a little bit more lenient with the time we give? And now I'm talking about...
we are already, Connor, and I can assure you. And it's funny is we just talk about, sometimes we talk about generational things on this show.
Yeah.
Because I'm of a complete different generation than you guys. I have 2 texts during the break of guys from my generation saying, Connor thinks this is like, that these guys get a lot of scrutiny on the Phillies. He goes, oh my gosh, they get treated with like pansy ass, is one of my buddies is like, they get treated like that. It's a difference between what you perceive as highly critical.
Right.
And what people who are 45 and above that have lived in this town perceive as highly critical. These guys have gotten a relative pass.
That's not just sports,
pass.
though. That's just generational.
No, it's just generational. And by the way, I'm not saying that it was better back when people were more like throaty with their critique.
Yeah, like the Mike Schmidt quote, like the thrill of winning at night, then the agony of reading about it the next day.
Yeah.
Like that's not a thing anymore.
Yeah, it's not, but it's also, to me, it's also a much softer fan base.
And I have a thought on that in a second. I do want to remind everybody they're listening to 97.5 The Fanatic, WPEN, and WPEN HD1 Burlington, Philadelphia, Beasley Media Group station, broadcasting live from the Comcast Business Studio, powering possibilities. I don't think it's fair to compare the scrutiny of like the 2010s and the 2020s to the scrutiny of the 1980s and 1990s.
Why is that not fair?
Because it's a different fan base. Like it's different.
But it isn't.
There is.
You see, no, it's for you. It is.
No,
not for people that have lived here.
I got you. But my point is this: there's always going to be differences in the way generations consume sports, consume media, consume everything. Like there are just different generational moods that will always exist. So the only true fair way to look at if a team is getting the proper amount of scrutiny is to
good word there.
I caught myself is to compare it to other teams playing in the city at the same time. Now, if in the 2020s,
so okay, but let's do that though. Do you think the Phillies, Sixers, or anybody else get the level of scrutiny the Eagles do?
No.
I don't even think it's in the same zip code.
Yeah, but you can watch every single Eagles game. You watch it with such attention to detail. Phillies games, Sixers games, there's 162, 82. Like you're in and out of those games. A lot of the fan base are in and out of those games. They're not judging every single play the same way they are with the Eagles.
That is correct. You guys are very much correct on that.
Like relative to how much we care about the individual sports, I'd say the scrutiny is pretty fair in this city. Like the Eagles are always going to get the most because they are the football team here in Philadelphia. Like that's always how it will be.
Because of the sport.
Yeah. And the Phillies are going to get less, and the Sixers are going to get less.
But the thing is, though, the team, I get it. The individual athletes absolutely get more scrutiny. I mean, we're bringing up Brandon Graham early in his career. There were people who thought he was a bust and thought he should go. And when he re-signed here, second contract, there were a lot of people who didn't want it.
Absolutely.
And he almost went in the division, if I remember, that there were people who didn't want it. Whereas, I mean, I think it's like soft hit. Everybody's very soft.
Where we are with these teams right now, the Eagles are built to win. The Flyers aren't there yet. When they get there, I'm sure people are going to say Matt Michkov needs to get over the hump, or he's not going to be worth all that expectation.
Well, maybe
the Sixers, people are checked out on completely.
Well,
so where's the scrutiny going to come from that? They don't care right now.
Well, what I would say to you is there's no other era where a bunch of guys who honestly, for the most part, have underachieved would be this beloved daycare. It's the daycare. Let's put seeds on people and water, and aren't they cute? This is fun.
Dude, that doesn't exist anymore.
It existed last year.
Yeah,
it existed in September of last year.
Okay, and this offseason, everyone was trying to run Alec Boehm out of town, and maybe rightfully so with the attitude stuff that we
I think
heard.
some of his teammates were when they literally backed his benching in the playoffs.
Right, but you can't say everyone's in on the daycare and then have them want to trade a guy who was an all-star starter this past year from that group and want him off the team. Like, the Phillies have very nearly jumped the shark with this fan base, and that's why this season is so big for them. Like, yeah, maybe they got a little bit more leniency than the Eagles do, and I think part of that is they are the Phillies and not the football team.
Right.
But listen, I think that there's a fair level of scrutiny for the Phillies and for the Sixers, and the reason the Flyers don't get it is because they haven't been to that competitive level. Trust me, when the Flyers are ready to compete, there will be people that lose their mind on Matvei Michkov the second he has a stretch of a week where he doesn't put up points and stuff like that. So, like, you're going to see it with that team once they're competitive, too. I think it's been closer to fair than you do. But, again,
I don't even think it's close.
Generational perspective is totally different on this one. Coming up next, you're going to hear our best 5 minutes of Adam Shefter, and we're going to continue this conversation on the scrutiny as well as judging players too early. We'll see what the people have to say. 610-632-0975 is the phone number to call in and text in. It is Kincade Salciunas here on 97.5 The Fanatic.
97.5 The Fanatic.
5 minutes of our interview with Adam Shefter from earlier today coming your way in just a little bit. But I do want to see what the people are saying on the text line, because we've had a lot of very interesting conversation today, all centered around the Brandon Graham retirement announcement from yesterday. That's a big moment in Philadelphia sports history, seeing a guy with that type of resume hang it up and say he's done playing. I mean, it's bittersweet. The sweet part is because of the way he went out and the second Lombardi and the way he toughed it out in that Super Bowl to play through another tear of the triceps tendon. Like, he's a legend in this town, and he was even without that final swan song. But the bitter part is you're losing a big part of the locker room, a leader, a guy who, for people around my age, was a mainstay of the Philadelphia Eagles teams that they can remember for pretty much their whole lives. So I'm interested in where the fan base is feeling today and what their emotions were like yesterday when that announcement came down. What do we have on the text line there, Begon?
Yeah, we got Peter and Redding checking in saying Brandon Graham's strip sack is easily the greatest moment of my 57 years of watching sports. I got to see it with my father, who recently passed away. No words can describe that. Absolutely priceless. Go Birds.
I mean, you just think about what that moment meant to people. And I imagine now, looking back on his career, Brandon Graham will have even more appreciation for what he did for people in that moment. Of course, he saw it at the parade that time. He saw it at the parade this time. The fact that we're even talking about two parades for the Philadelphia Eagles still feels like a fever dream, and you do not get to two parades without 55.
No.
Like, you can argue he's a monster part of both Super Bowl years. Even with the injury he suffered that kept him out for a lot of the second half of this season, he was very productive in the start of the season that led to their path that they got to the Super Bowl. Like, I could do this show for the next 100 years. And I think I could talk about Brandon Graham every single day of every single one of them.
He is, he's an incredible talent. I think he contributed more, honestly, was more critical to this year's team.
In a leadership role, do you mean?
No, I think everything.
Oh, wow.
I think they needed 22. Remember, they had 70 sacks that year.
That's true.
I mean, Brandon Graham had a great year, but they had 70 sacks. Everybody was eating. Now, Brandon Graham was part of that. He was a party to it. They needed him badly this year. With the departure of Hassan Reddick, who was enjoying his couch, hopefully, having a good time now down in Tampa, they needed him. And he had to wrangle up that room and make sure that everybody was on the right page and doing it. He certainly did a great job at it.
He certainly did. Now, someone who wrangles up this show and keeps this room in order every Wednesday morning is Adam Shefter, and he had some interesting things to say about the Eagles' offseason so far and that man, Brandon Graham, who we were just talking about. Let's listen back to the best 5 minutes of Adam Shefter. Adam Shefter joins us, and Adam, a big point of news yesterday for the Philadelphia Eagles. Brandon Graham announces his retirement after 15 years with the Philadelphia Eagles. What was your initial reaction to that news?
Well, I think it's a situation where the guy's been tremendous, and he's been somebody that you look to on and off the field as a leader, and it's a situation where basically, I mean, the guy came in and there were questions about whether he was going to make it initially as a first-round draft pick, and not only did he make it, but became the longest tenured Eagle in franchise history, which is quite a feat when you look at it. Guy was incredible, and bravo on a great career, carried himself with class and dignity. Just an impressive guy.
And a huge loss, by the way, a Michigan guy. So you got a little Shefter love there, right? I mean,
of course. Well, that gets factored into the answer.
You guys are family there. The loss to the Eagles, it's amazing. And Jimmy Kempsky, one of our fine writers here in town, brought up the point today. Right now, the Eagles currently, Adam, have 4 players on the roster over the age of 30 that will play this season. That seems incredible to me. Is that as odd as it sounds?
4 over 30.
Yes.
So
they have 4 guys on the roster. Dallas Goedert's one of them, by the way. You got your long snapper. You got Lane Johnson. You have your kicker, Jake Elliott. And Dallas Goedert, who may be moved on. So you have 4 guys. I've been doing the research. It looks like they're going to be the youngest defending Super Bowl champ of this century.
Yep. Well, and again, we've talked about the added draft picks that they have in other years, right?
Sure.
That that means that they're going to continue to get younger and younger and younger. So that trend that you just pointed out is going to continue and continue to go that way. I mean, that's just the way it is. That's the way they've set it up.
I'm also fascinated as to, with all those draft picks, what Howie may be wanting to do with them. Right. And I had a source in Georgia football speak to me last week and say that they said, well, from what I'm hearing, you're going to get another dog this week and then another one before camp. I didn't know if they were talking about the draft or whether they were talking about a trade. With all these draft picks, could the Birds be in on Trayvon Walker, who reportedly the Jaguars are shopping? You understand it more than anybody. Is he really on the market, and do you think Howie would take a swing like that?
Well, again, he's got the draft capital to do these things now. He can do what he wants. The money, the cap space, that's a different issue. But he's going to have the ability to be very flexible here, very flexible. So let's see how that works out moving forward here. It's going to be interesting.
Now, Adam, the Eagles have made some moves at edge rusher already, so we're looking at the acquisitions of Josh Uche and also Azeez Ojulari. What do they do in replacing Josh Sweat for this Eagles team?
Well, I think that's it already. You add a player like Azeez Ojulari. You have the draft picks. You have the young guy they had last year, whose name I can't even pronounce, right? Who came on and played?
Jalix Hunt.
Him?
Yeah. I mean, you got tons. Yes.
I mean, they've got the guys they need to get this done. In my mind, I don't think it's much of an issue. And they're always looking for more pass rush help. So what we see today on March 19th is not going to be what it looks like on August 19th or September 19th.
When you talk about leadership in the NFL, though, and in a locker room, it's amazing. They go and they win a Super Bowl when they lose Jason Kelce and Fletcher Cox in one off season, two of their biggest leaders all time in this franchise. Do we talk too much about what leadership is, and can young guys lead? Because this roster is going to be real young next year.
You know, I think leadership is overrated to me to a certain extent. I think when teams win, all of a sudden everybody is a leader. And when teams lose, by the way, not last year, but the year before when they were on that 10 game, where was all that leadership then that you're talking about?
Yeah, that's what I kept wondering about is when you hear about veteran leadership in the locker room, that locker room came unglued.
Yeah, okay, so there you go. That's what I'm saying. When you're winning, it's easy to have leaders. When you're losing, where are the leaders? I think leadership, the discussion of it, is one of the more overrated elements in sports. Either a team's playing well, and thus it'll have leadership, or it's not, and it won't. Right? This Eagles team, when it was losing, didn't have leadership. But yet, there were a lot of the same guys, were there not?
There it is, our best 5 minutes of our interview with Adam Shefter. Some great stuff there and some interesting tidbits on what could be coming for the Philadelphia Eagles. Their ability to move around with these draft picks is going to be a very intriguing storyline to watch as the draft approaches coming up in the end of April. Now, speaking of draft picks and interesting things to watch, we haven't talked about a couple teams in the city very much today, in the Flyers and the Sixers, but Johnny has a conversation about trust level that we're going to get into.
Sort of spins off our earlier conversation a little bit.
Absolutely does. So you can lay that out for the people coming up next. We're also going to continue the reaction to Brandon Graham's retirement announcement that came out yesterday around noon. And a big moment in Philadelphia sports, seeing an all-time Eagles great walk away. So we will discuss all of that coming up next. Plenty more still to come here on Kincade Salciunas 97.5 The Fanatic.
Fanatic Sports Update.
The longest tenured Eagle hangs him up. I'm Brendan Gunn with your Fanatic Sports Update. After 15 seasons and helping bring 2 Super Bowl titles to the city of Philadelphia, Eagles legend Brandon Graham called it a career yesterday. The 2010 first-round pick is always going to be remembered for his strip sack in Super Bowl 52, which helped the Eagles secure their first Super Bowl championship, but he did so much more on top of that. He played the most games in an Eagles uniform in franchise history, and he retires with the 3rd most sacks in team history behind Trent Cole and Reggie White. At his press conference yesterday, he had one last message
Message to the city of Philadelphia.
While my time on the field is coming to an end, my love for this team and city will never fade. Philadelphia and everybody, from the bottom of my heart, I just want to thank y'all. EAGLES, Eagles. Fly, Eagles, fly. My last one. BG out, baby.
The Sixers continue their road trip tonight with their third of 6 straight away from the Wells Fargo Center. Tonight is in Oklahoma City to take on the Thunder. Tip-off is at 8, and you can catch that game live right here on the Fanatic. And the Flyers remain idle tonight for a second straight night, but they're back in action tomorrow to take on the Washington Capitals down in Washington. And then 1 week from tomorrow, the Phils head down to Washington to begin their season opening weekend against the Nationals. This update was brought to you by Mercedes-Benz. The feeling of owning your first Mercedes-Benz is hard to believe, but it's real. From the leather stitching to the iconic design, every element of a Mercedes lives up to its reputation. See for yourself at your local dealer. I'm Brendan Gunn on the home of the 76ers and the Flyers, 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com.
Ricky Batalico.
Why can't you be that team that...
show just flown by.
It really
today.
has.
It makes
it's the sunshine outside.
It definitely is.
I swear to you, it's the warm weather. It's the sunshine. We're just all in better moods.
It's a great time of year.
It is. It's a great time.
Baseball season right around the corner. Opening day coming your way on March 27th for the Phillies down in Washington. And, you also, by the way, we brought it up earlier, but we're running a great promotion through Philly Sports Trips where you can win a couple of tickets on their bus trip down to Washington for opening day. So go to 975thefanatic.com for details on that. Shout out our friends over at Philly Sports Trips. There are a couple teams still in their regular season. It may not feel like it to you in Philadelphia at some points because the Sixers and Flyers are not playoff contenders this year. And now we're looking at off seasons upcoming for those teams that are going to be very pivotal for the Flyers to further their rebuild, for the Sixers to hopefully turn around without having to do a giant rebuild. And you have a couple of questions, or I guess one overarching question that covers both of those teams.
Yeah, do you trust it? Do you trust right now the administrations that are in place, and I'm not talking about the coaches, because I don't believe John Tortorella has more than 1 year left after this one. I don't believe he's got more than 1 year left. And I don't believe he's leaving the organization in any way. He's either going to be done this year or next year.
You're saying retire?
Yeah. Well, no, stay with the organization, but just in an advisory role.
Gotcha.
Go join the front office. To me, I'm asking you just from the people who are making the decisions. So we're talking the Dave Dombrowski's. We're talking but it's for Flyers and Sixers. So we're talking the Howie Roseman, Dave Dombrowski level. So we're talking about Danny Briere, Keith Jones. We're talking about Dan Hilferty, the brass of the Sixers.
Yeah,
so about Daryl Morey. There you go. Elton Brand.
Morey. Yeah,
Did I say Elton Boring? Did I call him boring? Elton Boring? He can be a little boring in an interview, but he's good. Okay, so I'm asking you. Do you trust the administrations that are currently in place to lead each team where they're sitting right now and where they got to go?
I do with the Flyers more so than the Sixers. But I do with the Sixers more than I think the average Sixers fan does.
Okay.
I know that we played a clip earlier in headlines from Marcus Morris talking about his lack of faith and lack of trust in Daryl Morey. And that's a player that was here in this city, former Sixer. He's a Philly guy. He knows the feeling of this fan base. We've also heard from Chris Paul and from James Harden, two prominent figures in the NBA in this era, say that they don't trust Daryl Morey.
It's happened again. Like that's not good stuff to be out there.
No, it is not. Now, we are within our rights to make our own determination. And I think that you could do much worse than Daryl Morey as a president of basketball operations.
Could you do much worse than this season? All the decisions he made. I don't think you could do much worse. The stupid 3-year extension, and I'll say, not Daryl being stupid, the stupid 3-year max extension for Joel Embiid will continue to be criminal malpractice in my mind.
Now and
I've been a huge Daryl Morey supporter. That is criminal malpractice. You didn't need to do it. You had the 24 season, the 24-25, and 25 and 26. You did not need to do it. You've given this guy max money for 3 more years, and he's a hobbled mess that may retire.
Yeah, now there's a way
it was dumb.
Well, it's dumb right now. There's a way that this may work out, not for the most positive for the Philadelphia 76ers, but you can still make something out of this. The Paul George thing, a lot of people hate that move right now, and I get it. He was not productive when he was healthy. He was not healthy much. He is done for the year. But if you now go out this offseason, you're able to trade him for a max contract player that ends up being more attractive to the Philadelphia 76ers. You could have come out of this last offseason where they signed Paul George. And if you didn't want to do the Paul George move, there weren't like other big-time max contract guys available. So you may
there really weren't. You didn't want to lose the spot is what they said.
Right.
I don't agree with that strategy, by the way. So I don't like that strategy.
No, but I don't think it's a total, everything's screwed type. Like, I think you may, if you trade Paul George in a max contract swap this offseason for somebody, and I'm not saying specifically Kevin Durant, but who knows what's going to happen this offseason, you could look back and say, well, I'm glad they had a movable max contract player on this team, and that opened up the door for this to happen. So I don't think the jury is out on those moves yet, but I will say the first year of the Paul George signing and the Joel Embiid extension look terrible.
Do you believe that? Do you believe you're ever going to see a great season out of Paul George? I do not.
No, but that's not what I'm saying.
Do you think you're going to have do you ever think you're going to see a very good season out of Paul George? Like playing 65 games and being a big contributor?
My guess would be no, but I'm not talking about Paul George. I'm just saying, like, you would not have had a contract move. If you didn't use that slot, you lose it. And if you lose it, you don't have that player to move for another max contract player available this offseason. So if you trade Paul George for a player that does look like he's more available. Right, and it's a big if.
And if you tell me, no, I don't think it's as big an if as you say.
Okay.
I think the Kevin Durant thing, who wants out, he always wants out, could absolutely be tangible, real. I think Phoenix is in a spot of who do you move for?
Right.
Paul George likes to be living out west.
That's the thing. Like, if you do a Paul George, Kevin Durant swap.
I would be giddy.
And then you look
back.
He'll
be 37.
No, guess what? I'm still giddy because it's better than what you're going to get. I'm telling you, the next 3 years of Paul George are going to be a major disaster. Disaster.
Right, and they won't be if you can move that contract. And if you look back and you say, if we didn't move that contract, we don't end up getting a player like Kevin Durant. It's a roundabout way to make something out of nothing. I just think we need to be, before we say it was a totally terrible move, we need to see the entirety of the move. It is not looking good right now. But my point on all of this.
Well, the decision to now.
Yes.
It was a terrible move.
The decision to now, it was not a good move. We are in lockstep on that. But, the story is not totally finished on that, even though it feels like that right now because we're in a holding pattern with the season still ongoing.
Good point.
What I will say, though, is for Daryl Morey's misses, he has not been this guy who has completely had no ability to move stuff. I mean, the Al Horford trade that led to draft picks and the ability to do that, like getting out from under that contract, was a stroke of genius.
It was brilliant.
The ability to bring in James Harden via that trade was a necessary move to offload that Ben Simmons deal to the Brooklyn Nets, who got nothing out of Ben Simmons. That was a very, very good trade.
Yeah, and the thing is, though, then the decision to part ways with Harden absolutely is not a good move.
Right. So
I mean, like he's had some big swings.
Yes.
And he's done some great things. But once it's sort of where Danny Briere's sitting right now. Mm-hmm. He set the table up, and then Daryl Morey has not done the right things.
Right.
We got to hope that Danny's going to do the right thing.
But the reason
he set the table.
Absolutely. And that's why I have more faith in the Flyers, because we haven't seen them at that point in the rebuild yet. But my point on Daryl Morey is anyone who's like, no, I totally don't have faith in this guy. I think there's more good than you give him credit for. Okay. There's also plenty of bad moves. So I'm at a wash with Daryl Morey, and I think that's a better spot than a lot of people in the fan base are.
I think that's fair.
And I'm trying to pull people a little bit more to even. I don't think it would be
I don't
absurd.
think Daryl Morey's a dope.
No.
But I do think he's had a horrendous year.
I would not be shocked if they go out and they make something out of this offseason where I say, okay, I have a little more interest in this team, but I wouldn't be shocked the other direction either. So if that's the answer you're looking for on that question, it's not glowing on the Sixers, but I'm not in as bad of a spot as I think some people in the fan base are. Coming up next, we have for you the Kincade Salciunas Key 3. And we also, I want to get into our final thoughts on the Brandon Graham retirement announcement, which has been a huge theme of today's show. We'll revisit some of the conversations we've had throughout, try and tie them up together with a nice bow as we get ready to wrap up the show. I'm Connor Thomas in for Andrew Salciunas, John Kincade to my left, Brendan Gunn on the board, more Kincade and Salciunas after this here on 97.5 The Fanatic.
We want to hear from you, so text us at 610-
right, so we've been talking throughout the show about the Brandon Graham retirement announcement, and it is a big, big moment in the history of the Philadelphia Eagles, one that we've called bittersweet throughout today's program, because the beautiful thing is you get to see a guy go out on the top of the sport, man. Brandon Graham is going to be remembered as an all-time Eagle. And do we have like
Who's
a laugh
laughing?
track playing? Interesting.
What
I don't
was
even know
that?
where that came from.
Brendan, I know Connor sometimes is laughable. But what was
feel like
that?
I'm
What
on
are you
Friends
reading
right
right
now.
Me, I'm not even near the board.
Wow.
And you didn't touch that,
No,
right?
we've got a ghost playing the laugh track.
I
in
don't
the
have a
studio.
laugh track on any of on the Kincade Salciunas thing.
Okay, that's crazy.
We'll move past.
That's pretty funny, though.
Salciunas
Because
must
it
be
sounded like you
wired
talked.
in.
Sounded like you talked, and they started laughing at you.
I love it, man. I
Now,
feel like Joey
a
Tribbiani.
lot of Connor's takes I do laugh at.
But the Brandon Graham thing is just like there's upside to seeing him go out in the way that he did, but the downside is you lose a leader and a player of that magnitude, and it's always sad to see some of your favorite players start to hang it up. It makes you feel old. It makes you, though, reflect on the beautiful times that you had watching that player, and we did that throughout today's show. We asked for people to check in on the text line 610-632-0975 on what their reaction to that was, and we asked multiple questions off of that throughout the show. So, Brendan, what do we have on our topics on the text line?
Yeah, we got Trevor and Percy checking in, saying his lasting memory of BG is the fact that he tore his triceps, came back, retore it in the Super Bowl, and no one ever knew about it. Speaks to the will, the grit, and the determination of BG.
And also, not stealing the moment. He could have easily said, boy, I got her. After the game, after they win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
The day of the parade. Instead, my wife's telling it to me in the pool in Jamaica because of Derek Gunn reporting it here on Kincade Salciunas.
Yeah, I mean,
that's an amazing guy to me that he wasn't going to let anything make the moment be not about team.
Sneaky humble, right? And I say sneaky not because anyone looks at Brandon Graham as like, oh, that dude got this huge ego and everything like that. But the way that he carries himself with all the smack talk and just constantly talking. Normally, the loud voice in the room is one that you kind of take a side eye at and be like, that person likes to hear themselves talk a lot. Trust me, we are not.
Stop looking at me, Connor.
No,
Shut up.
It's me too. Like, we are not guilty of that because we are radio hosts by trade. Like, we love to hear ourselves talk. But when you hear that loud person in the room, you always kind of think, oh, okay, that person likes themselves a lot. Brandon Graham is always a guy that will put team over self. And he had the comments that we played for you earlier where he was talking about, well, I just started to realize this year that how much I was loved in this city. And you were kind of worried.
That bothered me.
Yeah, you didn't see it earlier.
I felt like, come on, dude. You were so loved in this town.
I always think he just looked at it as this town loves the Eagles. And he talked about throughout his speech, which we don't have, obviously, the time to play the full thing for you, but we played clips throughout the show of his press conference. He talked about how special it is to play in Philadelphia, stuff that we heard Jason Kelce say, Fletcher Cox say, like what it's like to be loved in this city and what you have to do to play in this city. And every time you see somebody have one of these careers, and it's not often, and we've been blessed to see 3 of them in the past 2 off seasons come to an end and get a chance to hear those guys' thoughts, you get to truly hear how much it's appreciated when you make your bones in this city and you fight and you win and you become part of Philadelphia Eagles or Philadelphia sports immortality. And these are the times where you really get to celebrate not just Brandon Graham, but celebrate the guys that played alongside Brandon Graham, what the city did to support Brandon Graham, and what he did to support us. It's just the symbiotic relationship between player and fan base that is not exemplified any better by anyone else than these guys who spent their whole careers, some of them Hall of Fame careers, playing in the Midnight Green for this organization. It's a beautiful thing, and it really... It's hard not to be emotional when you think about the time that you spent and the joy that you got from getting to watch these players play for your favorite team. So all the love in the world to Brandon Graham. We will hear from him, I'm sure, again soon. But there was something...
very soon.
There was something we did not play from Brandon Graham that I had on the show sheet that I want to get back to, and Brendan's been playing it in his updates.
And his laugh track?
Yeah, not the laugh track, but...
That was not me. I swear to God, it was one of you guys. Because there's not a laugh
How
track
can it be
on here.
one of us?
I don't know
There's
what
a board
happened.
next to Connor and there's a board next to you.
We'll figure it out.
Wait a
The
minute,
show is devolving. We're yelling at each other.
No, they've disconnected that one.
It's not working on Johnny's
That's
end.
not there. They've disconnected that one.
I just think there's a ghost. But Brandon Graham, when he announced that he was retiring, because the press conference was just, we knew kind of what it was when the news came out that there would be a press conference at 12. But when he initially made the announcement, did the Eagles chant and everything, I just want you guys to hear this from him to show you his appreciation for the opportunity he had.
While my time on the field is coming to an end, my love for this team and city will never fade. Philadelphia and everybody, from the bottom of my heart, I just want to thank y'all. EAGLES, Eagles. Fly, Eagles, fly. My last one. BG out, baby.
My last one. Now, see, here's the thing. I love that you said my last one because it's a nice sentiment for that moment. That will not be the last time we hear Brandon Graham say fly, Eagles, fly, because he's going to be around this team. And
he is.
He talked about what's next for him, and I'm sure media is something that he aspires to do.
He's going to be amazing at it.
Absolutely. Like, his personality is
going to be great.
So we'll see Brandon Graham, but this is the ending of a chapter for him. And to hear him give the love to Philadelphia and also just, I mean, that's the smile that I'm going to miss the most of these guys. That's the personality and kind of like the aura that I'm going to miss the most. And a lot of people love Jason Kelce. And I'm not trying to pick between favorite children here or anything, but I am just going to say, like, if there was a dude of those four that I feel like anybody could get along with, there's no one that wouldn't love being in the presence of that personality. It was always Brandon Graham.
Yeah, I think.
Thank you, 97.5.
Yeah, and I don't think it says anything negative about Jason Kelce or otherwise.
No.
It just is. There's nothing like Brandon Graham.
No, there's not.
As far as that energy and everything, there's nothing like him.
And we were lucky to get a chance to watch his entire career here in Philadelphia, and that is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And if that's not a reminder, just to wrap up that conversation, the guys that we still have playing in the city, and I'm not just talking about Lane Johnson, I'm not just talking about the Eagles, but when you see a Bryce Harper, who we've talked about in the show, when you see a young Matt Michkov in his rookie season for the Flyers, when you see what Joel Embiid was and what Tyrese Maxey could become, when you see with the Eagles guys like Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith and the Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell pairing, on the offense is Saquon Barkley, the way you feel when you hear Brandon Graham announce his retirement should remind you to cherish the moments that you get to watch the great athletes that we do.
You trying to get me to choke up here, dude?
Listen, I'm telling you.
I'm serious, because honestly, it feels like if we weren't so set up for the future, it would be sad.
Absolutely.
Like, we have such a bright future as a fan base, franchise, everything like that. It's not as bad. But saying goodbye to Brandon Graham is.
Yeah,
it really is.
And I mean, that's our childhood. That's the last player from our high school days.
You little rotten snot-nosed
That's
bat.
it. That's the last guy that ever practiced at Lehigh during training camp.
Oh, my gosh.
Like,
how about Westchester?
I didn't even think about that.
How about Westchester?
Like, it's an end of an era.
And it goes by far too quick. So enjoy the time that you have with these players while you have them. Everybody hangs it up one day, and when these big retirements happen, it's just a reminder that, again, fully enjoy the moments. Speaking of enjoying moments, let's enjoy the best 3 minutes worth of moments from Kincade and Salciunas today in our Key 3.
Now, the Kincade and Salciunas Key 3. Today's best.
Obviously, the big news of the day yesterday was Brandon Graham calling it quits. He spent 15 years as a member of your Philadelphia Eagles, 15 very productive years all told. Some great moments in the biggest spots.
The greatest moment, would you say?
I would argue that.
I think it is the biggest play in franchise history.
Yeah, I mean, Philly special is right up there with it.
Yeah, I look at it as, I'll go as far as to say if Tom Brady has that ball, that they go down and score.
I don't think that's unfair to say.
Yeah, there was 2 minutes, I think 2 minutes, 12 seconds on the clock. Yeah, I got a feeling it would have happened.
And then on top,
and I love that it didn't.
Absolutely. On top of the play on the field, a transcendent personality in this city, a guy that always had a smile on his face, that you can point directly to his type of feeling and his charisma and his character rubbing off on other Eagles teammates. And I mean, it was wonderful to get to hear him talk yesterday about what his experience was like over the past 15 years playing with the guys he did, and what he tried to accomplish, and what he felt he accomplished. And honestly, he's undoubtedly one of the all-time greats. Adam Shefter joins us. And Adam, a big point of news yesterday for the Philadelphia Eagles. Brandon Graham announces his retirement after 15 years with the Philadelphia Eagles. What was your initial reaction to that news?
Well, I think it's a situation where the guy's been tremendous, and he's been somebody that you look to on and off the field as a leader, and it's a situation where basically, I mean, the guy came in and there were questions about whether he was going to make it initially as a first-round draft pick. And not only did he make it, but became the longest tenured Eagle in franchise history, which is quite a feat when you look at it.
Can I tell a personal story on you?
Absolutely.
We were at the Philly Sports Trips pre-Super Bowl get-together in South Philly.
Yeah.
And it is the first time in the presence of an athlete that I've ever seen you be like you don't you
tend over there.
Connor keeps it very professional. We're down on the field I remember opening day last year for the Phillies. We're down on the field. We're talking to Jason Stark and everything like that. It's the first time I've ever seen you be like, Brandon Graham's over there. Yeah. We should get a picture with him at this event, this casual event, and do that. And he brought that joy to people.
Absolutely.
I've never seen you act like that ever. And you weren't acting. He wasn't acting fanboy.
No.
But you were obviously moved by Brandon Graham.
It's funny because it's not even because he's like, oh, this all-time favorite Eagle for me. Because he is. But Brandon Graham was one of those guys who's like, I love the player. I think he's great. I had other players that I connected with more,
Sure.
Right? But he's just, the personality of him is so engaging that when I saw him in person, I knew I could come, go over and say hello. I'm just like, you can't not want to hang out with Brandon Graham.
And that's the key, is that there are people like that in life that have that energy. He's got it. I would hope that he knew that there are grown men like me who literally would be thrilled for the rest of our lives because of stripping the ball from Tom Brady. And that picture, a piece of art, hangs in our house because it's my wife's favorite play ever, watching Brady sit on the ground crying. That Brandon Graham stripping that ball, and we have that as a painting in our house. I'll look at it forever and smile. I hope he felt long ago how beloved he was.
And I'm sure he did, in a way, feel that way long ago. Speaking of Brandon Graham and realizing how the city felt about him, that was the Kincade Salciunas Key 3, the best 3 minutes of today's show. It was a fun day to get to look back on that. But again, this is a great time in Philadelphia Eagles history. This is the best era in the history of the franchise. So Brandon Graham will have to forgive us if we do indeed move on quick to what's next for this team, because there's a lot that they need to accomplish this offseason. So if only we had an Eagles insider that could join us tomorrow.
How about sitting in with us for an hour?
That would be great.
A birthday boy from yesterday, Andrew DeCecco.
Yesterday was his birthday?
Yeah.
Oh, my God, I didn't even text him.
DeCecco was yesterday.
Oh, I got it. Oh, man, that's
It's
on
okay.
me. That's a big miss.
The Westbrook year, 36.
I love that for him.
There it is.
So we will talk to the belated birthday boy tomorrow, Andrew DeCecco. We're also going to talk to Kevin Nagandi of ESPN.
I know him.
He's going to have a lot that he's going to be able to
He
tell
has
us
a lot
about.
to say.
Guess what?
He has plenty to say about sports in Philly.
He does.
That's a very important interview because that will be your last chance to get inside information on the NCAA tournament before it tips off. So you're going to want to be tuned in for that one because I know Kevin's locked into the college game.
He loves it.
So we'll be able to bring that up and also talk some Brandon Graham with him. As
now
these
the monitors
screens go wild in here. You know what that probably is? That's when they flash the lights at the bar for last
I'm telling
call.
you, we got ghosts.
Yeah.
We have ghosts today. Let me just tell you this, though. You remember, support life-saving cancer research. Join Window Nation and all of our other donators that support the American Association for Cancer Research. You can do it at 975thefanatic.com/AACR. I'm living proof 3 times over. Cancer research saves lives.
Shout out to Nifty 50s for supplying the food and the fuel for Kincade and Salciunas this morning, the great work that they do. Thank you very much to Adam Shefter for joining, and great work by our whole crew, Johnny, Brendan, Haley back there running things on the YouTube. Another fun day. We've got 2 more days without Andrew Salciunas, so we'll be holding it down for you tomorrow. The Mike Missanelli Show comes your way next, right here, 97.5 The